So depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show, check this out. All right, it's Friday night. The Law of One. Welcome. Let me take down this banner here so you guys can see me. It looks like my Wi-Fi is a little bit latency of the Wi-Fi is a little bit down. Let me put myself up in full screen for right now. Welcome, Paulie Sullivan. Welcome. Hiya. Welcome. Share this out. Get everybody in here, right? You tag everybody that you're trying to get in here. Share this out in different places. It is Friday here in the West Coast of the United States of America, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That is, in fact, a GMT -7. Depending on where you are in the world, you could extrapolate out from that, see what time of the day it is. And sorry, there was a little gnat flying by my head. I didn't know that was a thing going on in my house right now. So it's Friday night. Let me turn that camera a little bit so you're not seeing the boxes that I have over here in the corner. Right. So I'm off kilter just a tad. I have the microphone is probably not quite centered on me this way on the table, but that's okay. It'll work where it's at. All right, so welcome everybody. Like I said, share this out around the world. It's the Law of One. So we're on session 90, I think. Let me look here. We're on session 90, part 2 of 2. I rewound it, even though we had gone almost halfway through it. I rewound it because of the conversation that they're talking about there in that session. So it's part 2 of session 90 of the Law of One that we will be starting here shortly. So I have that primed and ready to go, just because where we stopped was in the middle of the questioning about this topic. So because of that, I decided to back up a little bit to this, and we're kind of still in the middle of that anyways. But however, this way you'll be able to figure out where we are if you're just tuning in for the first time. Otherwise, if you tuned in last week, you're going to hear the first 5 or 6 questions repeated and the answers repeated. So we'll just go from there. Okay, so like I said, make sure you share this out. It is Friday. No telling how many people are going to be here. There's weird holidays going on around the world right now, so some people may not be tuning in on this Friday, but we will go where we're at. We will continue with the Law of One. For those of you around the world listening on the MP3 broadcast, welcome. You guys won't be able to talk in the chat until I start broadcasting over there. I may start going live on Spreaker or one of those to be able to actually give you guys the opportunity on the MP3 broadcast to tune in live around. Tripping, so I'll wait. Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is tripping, and I was buffing there for a second. My Wi-Fi is down at a low place right now. I can see that. I don't know why it does that. It's probably military. I'm in an area where I have a military base around me. Three military bases, and 2 international civilian air bases within 5-mile radius of me here in the state capital of California. Cassie, welcome. So, so like I said, share this out, tag people, get them in here. And I rewound to the beginning of this, not the beginning of the session, but the beginning of this video, which is the second half of session 90. So we're on question, I think, 16. Don't quote me. We'll find out when it starts here. But I wanted to back up a few just because of where the conversation was going, because they were talking about, Dawn asked the question about different logos that is not Earth logos as far as the dynamic between good and evil, where here on this Earth, currently there is approximately 14% of the population is in fact evil in service to self, and the other 86% are in service to others. Sole choice. You can't pretend. You can only pretend for humans. So somebody who is in fact self-serving can pretend they're not until they dupe you like a trapdoor spider, and then they pounce. But you can't do that to the universe. There's just no way of pretending. So even though they'd like to pretend they can pretend that, they can't. They can only do that for human sake, not to the universe. The universe knows all that and sees all that. So the question for Dawn, you will see quickly, is does Ra know of other places? And Ra, he was asking Ra about their dynamic when they were on Venus here in this solar system, and their percentage to good evil ratio on there, and whether Ra had experienced other planets or other logos that were also in third and fourth dimension, and what was the dynamic between good and evil ratio there, because that varies, and Ra will explain that to you here. I believe he talks about that varies depending on the logos. So literally, if you leave the solar system and you go to another solar system where they have third dimensional life forms, when you go to that planet, you're going to see that it might mirror this one. It may even be humans from here, say, that are living there that came from Earth, but their dynamic of good to evil ratio does not mean that there will be exactly the same as they are from here, this Earth. It will develop on its own, and just like any other ecosystem, just like language. I talked about that last week. Just like language regionally. So if you look at the examples on Earth of just the English-speaking countries, look at Canada, America, Australia, England, Ireland, Scotland, who all speak English, and they basically speak a different dialect of English. And then within the country of Ireland, America, Canada, north, south, east, west, you're going to have cultures that speak completely different slang languages and accents for the same language. Just in major cities like London and West London, you have a different accent. The same thing happens in New York City and northern New York City and the boroughs and southern New York City and Long Island. You have completely different way of speaking. And then you literally go across the water, which is only about half a mile wide, and you're in New Jersey, completely different accent. So you have these accents that happen. So the culture is also that way. And here on our Earth, the dynamic of that is, depending on what race you are, then you end up with a different culture, and you end up with different foods and all of that. So I'm showing you that because if you see that and you realize different countries have different foods because they have different dynamic, same thing happens with worlds, with planets, right? So it doesn't change. It just gets to where the microcosm to the macrocosm. It just gets on a larger scale. Even that gets tailored down to that. Reese, welcome. Denise, welcome. Jamie, welcome. Fiona, welcome. Hi, guys. If you guys don't say hello in the chat, I don't know you're all here. I just see numbers. Otherwise, if you say something in the chat, I'm more aware of that. I see it, right? I see you guys. Okay. So that's where we are. So I'll go ahead and start. Like I said, I backed up all the way to the beginning. I don't know how many questions that was. Probably 5 or so or more questions. I backed up just to the beginning of this video, which is halfway through session 90 of the Law of One. Right. So, sorry, I'm reading what Fiona. I was reading what you posted in the chat. So, okay. So let's go ahead and let me pull up the Law of One into full screen here. And you can see there on your screen that it is session 90, June 19th, 1982, part 2 of 2 from Matthew Moose, the group of people who put together this. I used these videos back when I did the Law of One the first time. I like this format, and I should have been doing it the entire time, but they had added commercials, and I didn't want to have to mess with the commercials. However, it took me doing a lot of editing to get things to work with my program, but I didn't have the visuals on the screen for you to see, so I decided to go back to this version of it, and I like this voice better anyways. Okay, so let me go over here, and we'll go ahead and start this, and you guys will do a sound check. You guys let me know if you can hear it okay, and we will just start up and continue right here with session 90 of the Law of One, June 19th, 1982.
Question 90.17. Questioner, is Ra familiar with the archetypical mind of some other logos that is not the same as the one we experience? Answer, I am Ra. There are entities of Ra which have served as far wanderers to those of another logos. The experience has been one which staggers the intellectual and intuitive capacities, for each logo sets up an experiment enough at variance from all others that the subtleties of the archetypical mind of another logos are most murky to the resonating mind, body, and spirit complexes of this logos. Question 90.18. Questioner, there seems to have been created by this logos, to me anyway, a large percentage of entities whose distortion was towards warfare. There have been the Moldek and Mars experiences and now Earth. It seems that Venus was the exception to what we could almost call the rule of warfare. Is this correct, and was this envisioned and planned into the construction of the archetypical mind, possibly not with respect to warfare as we have experienced it, but as to the extreme action of polarization in consciousness? Answer, I am Ra. It is correct that the Logos designed its experiment to attempt to achieve the greatest possible opportunities for polarization in third density. It is incorrect that warfare of the type specific to your experiences was planned by the Logos. This form of expression of hostility is an interesting result which is apparently concomitant with the tool-making ability. The choice of the Logos to use the life form with the grasping thumb is the decision to which this type of warfare may be traced. Question 90.
Meaning bipedal people, right? Bipedal, so that would be, humans, primates, Homo sapien, Homo sapiens. That would include the gray aliens and the Draco, right? That's what he's talking about there, right? So I'm assuming you guys can hear the law of one, because somebody would have said we can't hear anything, and there was a lot of dead air just then. So I'm assuming that you guys can hear that. Okay, Cassie, thank you for tagging everybody. Where are they? Get them in here. What's going on with those people? Get them in here. Tag them. All right, here we go. Let's continue here.
19. Questioner, then did our Logos hope to see generated a positive and negative harvest from each density up to the sixth, starting with the third, as being the most efficient form of generating experience known to it at the time of its construction of this system of evolution? Answer, I am Ra. Yes. Question 90.20. Questioner, then built into the basis for the archetypes is possibly the mechanism for creating the polarization in consciousness for service to others and service to self. Is this, in fact, true? Answer, I am Ra. Yes. You will notice the many inborn biases which hint to the possibility of one path's being more efficient than the other. This was the design of the Logos. Question 9.
Right. Do you see that? Right. So the question there was then built into the bias for the archetypes is a possibility is possibly the mechanism for creating the polarization in consciousness for service to others and service to self. Is this in fact true? Answer, yes. I am Ra. Yes. You will notice that many inborn biases which hint to the possibility of one path's being more efficient than the other. This was designed for the Logos. That's actually important. Ponder that and think about that.
90.21. Questioner, then what you are saying is that once the path is recognized, either the positive or the negative polarized entity can find hints along his path as to the efficiency of that path. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. That which you say is correct upon its own merits, but is not a repetition of our statement. Our suggestion was that within the experiential nexus of each entity within its second density environment and within the roots of mind there were placed biases indicating to the watchful eye the more efficient of the two paths. Let us say, for want of a more precise adjective, that this Logos has a bias towards kindness. Question 90.22.
Okay, so do you see that? So Chandra, welcome. So do you hear that right there? So in this particular Logos here on Earth, the self-serving path is at a disadvantage of efficiency. The service to others path has a, what's the word that he used, right? More precise, right? So literally the two paths, let's say for a want of more precise objective, that this Logos has a bias towards kindness. So you would think that that would be the case, considering there's 86% of the population that is in fact in service to others, right? But that's not necessarily that regard. However, that's what keeps the dynamic the way that it is. So even though, evil people, the reason why we're on this to get to here and to show this is that the people on this earth that are in fact in service to self, the 1% of the 14% that are in fact in service to self, the 1% that is trying to own everything, is trying to control the narrative of everything, because they're trying to flip that narrative of whether or not this logos is predisposed to or enjoying more the in service to self or in service to others side. And they're trying to change everyone's thinking, change their mind and actions by controlling every genre that every single person is exposed to, which they're doing. And by doing so, they're trying to change the narrative to make more people in service to self and do more evil, because they're trying to flip that, because they want to take total control and be in complete domination. It is, in fact, the dynamic and the nature of people who are self-serving to try and attempt to do so. For that reason, the universe itself is set up so that the universe itself, the logos themselves, the matrix itself, combats that naturally, because it takes people a while to wake up to realize what's going on and to be able to consciously combat that, because you have to be waking up, which means that it takes between 7 and 10 lifetimes to get to that. So your realization that is a thing at all, given organic attitudes, you may not learn that knowledge until you're on life 6 or 7. So that's a long time to be blind, to not know what's going on, and to have evil people trying to turn you evil and trying to spin the dynamic that direction. So for that reason, to make sure that evil does not completely take over in most cases, in most logos, in most planets, it is set up in the matrix to not allow that to happen, so that the evil cannot overwhelm the universe and try and take complete control of the universe, because it is in their nature to do so and to try and take control. So they cannot be allowed to do so. So it is designed into the nature of the beast to stop the beast from actually taking complete domination and turning everybody evil. So literally, the creator of the universe was aware that left for the evil people to be truly evil, they had to have that drive to ultimately try and take over the universe. And they have to stay with that drive in them to actually be organically as evil as you can be. So the only way that they could do that and make sure that the universe itself didn't get taken over by all evil was they had to have safeguards, stopgaps. That's one of them. The other one being that evil cannot exist in this universe past the halfway point of the 6th density or dimension, period. No matter how much they wish it, no matter how much they try, no matter how much they try to convince people, no matter how much they try to change the dynamic, it is designed in the matrix that is the proverbial and literal purgatory and hell. That is as far as you can go, the furthest away from the light. And no matter how evil you become, and no matter how long you want to stay there, you will never, ever, 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 until the end of time, and even past that, because you're not created to be able to move past that. And you will eventually, no matter how evil you are, you will eventually have to repent your ways and become from self-serving to in service to others, or you can rule in hell for the rest of eternity. That's your choice. Okay. All right. So that's one of the reasons why that I rewound this to begin with, to get us to where we are here. Okay. All right. Let's continue here.
Questioner, then you say that the more efficient of the two paths was suggested in a subliminal way to second density to be the service to others path. Am I correct? Answer, I am Ra. We did not state which was the more efficient path. However, you are correct in your assumption, as you are aware from having examined each path in some detail in previous querying. Question 90.23. Questioner, Could this be the reason for the greater positive harvest? I suspect that it isn't, but would there be logwa that have greater negative percentage harvests because of this type of biasing? Answer, I am Ra. No. There have been logwa with greater percentages of negative harvests. However, the biasing mechanisms cannot change the requirements for achieving harvestability either in the positive or in the negative sense. They are logwa which have offered a neutral background against which to polarize. This logos chose not to do so, but instead to allow more of the love and light of the infinite creator to be both inwardly and outwardly visible and available to the sensations and conceptualizations of mind, body, spirit complexes undergoing its care in experimenting.
See, and in this particular place, because of the 86 percentile of people that are in service to others, that dynamic was added by the people that were here and is still being reiterated, reconstituted constantly. So this place, even being as harsh and as hard as it is, just in this place alone, the people here have made a stopgap to make sure that it couldn't get out of control. However, that they're allowing a lot more control than they would in other places by the very nature of this place. And in doing so, this place got stuck, but it was designed to get. I don't think Ra talks about that, but it was designed to get as stuck as it is, so that this scenario could play out the way that it's playing out. But then we came in and decided to use this as an experiment to change the way we upgraded, instead of having to have, I talked about that last week, instead of having to have a global catastrophe, which has happened every time on this planet so far, by the way, the last one being the flood that occurred in the norm before that. I mean, all of them up until the flood were being done that way, where it would be a cataclysm and most of the population would die off to have a harvest. And we decided that with this next cycle, because it's the last cycle of having third dimensional life forms be present in this planet's vibratory pattern, it's supposed to be first, second, fourth, and eighth currently, but we're holding this in place until we can upgrade this species here on Earth at this particular time to spontaneously shift into fourth, and then the other people will just die from natural causes that can't go into 4D, and they'll just move to a 3D planet and get reinserted and veiled, and they'll never even know they were here. They won't have any memory of it, but their higher selves will, and they'll know that they were part of this. So we're doing that because this is the last one. And it's always best to do that on the last one, because you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of people moving to a new location. It's going to be a small number of people that are here compared to the 8 billion souls that are here that will shift. And a lot of them won't stay. Some of them will, and they'll go into the fourth and then leave. But probably, because 86% of the population here is in fact wanderers. Of that, probably 3/4 of them will, when they cease, they won't stay in, even in 4D though, unless that's where they came from. Most of them probably came from 5D anyways. So we'll see. I don't know exactly the dynamic. I can look that up, but I'm in the middle of doing Law of One currently, so I'll maybe pay attention to that and talk about it next week. Okay, let's move on to the next question here.
Question 90.24. Questioner: were there any other circumstances, biases, consequences, or plans set up by the logos other than those we have discussed for the evolution of its parts through the densities? Answer: I am Ra. Yes. Question 90.25. Questioner: what were these? Answer: I am Ra. One more, that is, the permeability of the densities, so that there may be communication from density to density and from plane to plane, or subdensity to subdensity. Question 90.26. Questioner: then as I see the plan for the evolution by this logos, it was planned to create as vivid an experience as possible, but also one which was somewhat informed with respect to the infinite creator and able to accelerate the progress as a function of will because of the permeability of densities. Have I covered accurately the general plan of this logos with respect to its evolution? Answer: I am Ra. Accepting the actions of the unmanifested self and the actions of self with other self, you have been reasonably thorough. Question 9.
I love that when he gets a little snarky. Accepting the actions of the unmanifested self and the actions of the self with other self, you have been reasonably thorough. I love that.
90.27. Questioner, then, is the major mechanism forming the ways and very essence of the experience that we presently experience here, the archetypical mind and the archetypes? Answer, I am Ra. These resources are a part of that which you refer to. Question 90.28. Questioner, what I am really asking is what percentage of the part, roughly, are these responsible for? Answer, I am Ra. We ask once again that you consider that the archetypical mind is a part of the deep mind. There are several portions to this mind. The mind may serve as a resource. To call the archetypical mind the foundation of experience is to oversimplify the activities of the mind, body, spirit complex. To work with your query as to percentages is, therefore, enough misleading in any form of direct answer that we would ask that you re-question. Question 90.29. Questioner, that's okay, I don't think that was too good to question anyway. When Ra initially planned for helping the Egyptians with their evolution, what was the primary concept, and also secondary and tertiary, if you can name those, that Ra wished to impart to the Egyptians? In other words, what was Ra's training plan or schedule for making the Egyptians aware of what was necessary for their evolution? Answer, I am Ra. We came to your peoples to enunciate the law of one. We wished to impress upon those who wished to learn of unity that in unity all paradoxes are resolved, all that is broken is healed, all that is forgotten is brought to light. We had no teaching plan, as you have called it, in that our intention when we walked among your peoples was to manifest that which was requested by those learned teachers to which we had come. We are aware that this particular line of querying, that is, the nature and architecture of the archetypical mind, has caused the questioner to attempt, to its own mind unsuccessfully, to determine the relative importance of these concepts. We cannot teach for any, nor would we take this opportunity from the questioner. However, we shall comment. The adept has already worked much, not only within the red, orange, yellow, and green energy centers but also in the opening of blue and indigo. Up through this point the archetypes function as the great base or plinth of a builded structure or statue, keeping the mind complex viable, level, and available as a resource whenever it may be evoked. There is a point at which the adept takes up its work. This is the point at which a clear and conscious consideration of the archetypical mind is useful.
See, so that, I mean, you have to kind of look at that. Joanne, welcome. you have to kind of look at that and understand that. That's why it's important, so important to balance your chakras or to learn about the chakras, the archetypes, the 7 major arcana, and learn what those, how those affect you, everyone else, including your astrological sign, and how those archetypes of that imprint on you and everything else. This is I teach this all the time when I tell people you need to know what I mean. Literally, just looking today at you look at astrological signs. I'm a Virgo by the Greco-Roman calendar and the old 28-day, 13-month moon calendar that the planet used to go by before the Romans took control of the world, and we're still living in a Roman world with all the laws that are set down by the Roman Catholic Church since they've been ruling it. That's what you have going on now that is ruling the world, is that Roman dictation from not too long after Christ was gone. So we're still living in that. And then, so because of the older calendar that everyone else went by, even the Greeks, I would be a Leo, right? So I was looking today and somebody posted something that was the Egyptian astrological signs. And I hadn't actually looked at that before. And I decided to actually look at that. And it had me as Mur, M-U-R, which is the daughter of Amun Ra. And No, not the daughter of Amun-Ra, the wife of Amun-Ra. And so I was reading what that meant. It's a feminine energy, the goddess of the world and life bringer to the world. Sort of like the god Pan in the Viking pantheon in Greek, or the Green Man, being a male though in those religions over there, right? So then I decided, because I was talking to Brooke at the time, she was on her way to work, I decided to look up what her Egyptian sign would be. She's born January 21st. So I decided to look up her Egyptian sign, and it turns out Amun-Ra. Okay. So literally her and I are compatible by the Greco-Roman calendar, astrological signs, but I'm a masculine sign, she's a feminine. And then by the Egyptian signs, our signs are actually married. So the deities that we're ruled under, but I'm feminine and she's masculine. So the deities that we're ruled by, those archetypes of our birth, we're compatible. Not only are we compatible, we're married, right? And I was like, wow, did you know this? She's like, I didn't even know that the Egyptians had astrological signs like that. And I said, I didn't either, I'll be honest with you. And then I looked it up, and it was a real thing. And I was like, okay, that wasn't just made up by some AI. This is actual and real. And I was like, that's weird and kind of cool that it's the opposite mirror effect of the the Western Judeo-Christian Greco-Roman Greco-Roman ideology that was dominating the world. And then when you take that away and go back further to the Egyptian, we're actually the opposite aspects, but we're still compatible. And that's bizarre, but kind of cool. And then I got to wondering, because I know that there's the Asian, the Chinese, and they have the different ones. And I haven't looked at that to see a comparison. I know what I am, but I don't know what Brooke is there in that. And I haven't looked it up. I didn't even think of it at the time. So now I'll probably look it up after the show and see what that shows. And if those same archetypes are applicable across the world, and whether or not, I'll have to. Yes, I will do that. Cassie said, "Can you put the Egyptian sign post in the group chat, please?" I will have to. Let me grab it right now. I'll do it while we're talking. I'll look it up because I didn't actually copy it. It was on Facebook. Somebody on Facebook posted it, and I was looking at it there, and something told me to write it down, but I did not. So I will do just that, right? So I'll actually, hold on. Let me look at this up here and find one that has their names on it on a visual, and I will put it in the Law of One chat. I think this one does right here. Oh, this is the one they posted. So I'm going to go to the same image that they posted that I was looking at before, and I'm going to save this right now, and I will put it in the Law of One chat. For those of you who are in the Law of One chat, I will post this in the Law of One. All right, I can put it up on the screen. What am I thinking? Let me share my screen. I'll put it in the chat as well. But first, let me share my screen here in StreamYard. And I will put it up there because I can always reshare the other one here. So do I have to stop sharing to reshare that? I think I do, but that's okay. I'll do this and share my screen here and then find it. And I think that's the one. Nope, that's the one right there. So let me share that. Can you guys see that on the screen? Let me see what it looks like. It's too small. Okay, and I can't bring it up on the screen properly. So I will, let me close that, stop sharing that, and I'll put the Law of One back up on here, right? Let me do that, and then I will then let me put myself up here so you guys can see me. So I'll go ahead and share that to the Law of One chat, and then I will see about sharing it for those of you to see it. But let me first pull this up here for you guys to see in the Law of One chat. So in the chat, class chat, I've shared it there so you guys can look it up, and you can look up the names of whatever your is. And theirs is weird. They have a weird, you'll see them in there, like the first part of September up to the 8th is in one sign, and then the 9th through another part is in a different sign. And so each one will have like half of one. And I was combined with like I think Brooke was combined with Taurus, and Taurus is April, and her birthday's in actually January. So weirdly, the latter part of January is synonymous with Taurus of the other sun sign, but doesn't have any of those attributes in her. And it was very accurate, by the way, when I read what the signs mean and what the attributes are, or archetypes. I'm talking like I'm looking at the camera. Oh no, I did what's up there. I thought I had the image up, and it's very accurate to my personality. When I was reading it to Brooke, she was like, "Wow!" So then I went and looked up hers and went, "Wow, okay, All Moon Ra," and I read it, very accurate. So their archetypes from the different. It's seemingly the archetypes from around the world, though they appear again like religions to be completely different. The archetypes are very, very, very similar and just told from a different perspective. So even though it's it's a feminine energy that I'm listed under as the mother energy instead of the opposite in the Greco-Roman, being a Virgo is a feminine, because Virgo is a feminine blind justice. So it is a feminine energy archetype. But the archetypes are more masculine, godlike in that pantheon. But then again, I think just about everything is because that's more of a male-dominated religion and stuff, right? Yeah, right. Jamie asked that question, right? And I was actually answering that. Yeah. So every time I've looked at them from around the world, and that's why I didn't look at the aspects from the Asian ones, but I know what my sign is in that, what year I was born under, what animal. I don't know what I could look up Brooke, because she's January 21st. I know that, and I know the year that she was born, right? So I know that I could look up her, but mine fits. So I'm assuming that hers does too. So around the world, at least with those three pantheons, Greco-Roman, Chinese, and Egyptian, all of the archetypes actually coincide in a very large way so far that I've seen so far. When I look up like my brother and my sister and things, it's the same. So that, like religions, they're told slightly different with different names, but and maybe even a different deity figure, but the archetypes that rule over you, the aspects, are all still the same. So yeah. So Jamie, yeah. So yeah, Jamie was asking that question, which I didn't see because I wasn't here in the studio, and I was actually answering the question for her. So yeah, so it's actually really cool. You guys should look into that. I thought it was really cool that they all get together, and I had not thought about that so much, which anybody who's an astrologer probably knows that, right, already. And I'm saying things, and they're going, well, of course, you didn't realize that. I never really compared. I didn't do a theological ideology for that comparative to that until I just basically did it this morning, about two hours or an hour and a half prior to going live. And so then I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of cool, right? Denise said in the Egyptian mind is, and I wouldn't know how to say that, right? Bastet, I think is how you say that, but I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. So I don't know what that means. I'd have to look that up, but I'll bet you if you look it up, Denise, and look up your astrological Greco-Roman astrological sign, you'll find that the archetypes are the same, different name possibly, and it could even be a masculine, feminine, maybe a dual aspect, but I'll bet you the archetypes are almost identical. You'll find that. That's what I'm finding. So that would suggest, and now here's my nerdy scientist coming out, that would again suggest that the people of the past knew a great deal more about what's going on in the universe and the aspects and archetypes that rule over us than we in this modern era, in our arrogance, because we have cars and steel buildings and computers, that we arrogantly believe that we know more than any of those cavemen back then could ever possibly know. And the truth is they knew more than we know, and we're only discovering the extent to which they actually knew more than us the more we figure stuff out and realize they already had it drawn. They didn't have computers and microscopes and all the things and technology that we had and have now, and they're correct about things. And when we discover things and all of a sudden figure out the pattern of it, we look at that pattern and then we go back in Egyptian, Greek, Roman, further back, Chinese, Japanese lore, and we find out that some dude 100,000 years ago drew a picture and it's accurate. Then when we're figuring that out, the flower of life, all kinds of stuff, the yin and the yang, they literally found out that the yin and the yang is actually was created when they took variables, integers, and put them into a computer, and the computer spit out an image, and it turned out to be the freaking image that the Asians wrote down that is the yin and the yang. And they say that goes back tens of thousands, if not, 50, 60,000 years that somebody wrote that down. So somehow either, and that's when everyone goes, aliens. So, my buddy Giorgio Tsoukalos would love that. He would go, aliens, immediately. Aliens gave it to them, and that's how they know. It was someone with technology that told them that, and that's what, that way they make more money at Prometheus and the History Channel and over there on Gaia TV. So they make more money at it by telling everybody that aliens, see, that's proof that the aliens got here, because there's no way those monkeys knew that stuff. So it had to have been somebody with a rocket ship who came and told them that knowledge. Anunnaki, come to our alien con and give us some more money, and we'll talk in front of you, tell you how it's all aliens and has nothing to do with spirituality, because there is no God except for money. Money is God, right? So just like using, Jamie says, just like using their hands to manipulate energy and not need technology like we do, right? Is it kind of the same? Yeah, no, that's my point. They were more spiritual. The problem that we have today, like if you look at the guy who built the Coral Castle, I can't think of his name right now, over there in Florida, he said he figured out what the Egyptians knew. By himself, he was able to levitate tons, 4 or 5 ton, 100-ton blocks of coral. He was able to levitate them and move them into place and build this whole place. And he said he knew exactly with the technology that the Egyptians had. He discovered the secret. Never told anyone, but he did it, and it still stands to this day. And they can't figure out the technology. But when I looked into it, when I was in college, I started studying that because we were looking at all of that possibility. Even I went to Tibet and watched some Tibetan monks using modern day instruments, playing something that sounded hideous to our ears. We're able to use that vibration from that to levitate a 5-ton block. And the guy picked it up with one hand and pushed it, and it went up 200 feet on the side of a cliff, where 2 other monks grabbed it, played around with it, and set it down, and picked it up, and then pushed it back, and they caught it, and they set it above the ground at about 6 inches so that people could see that. And then they stopped playing, and it went, and the ground shook. Saw that actually happen, among other things that we were working on back then to look into, and discovered that because of our cell phone signals and our wireless television and communication signals around the world, we're making so much static noise. It is electromagnetic pulsing through everything around us, that it is, and as loud as we are, because of that, radio and all of this stuff that's going on, that we have going on, the white noise that we are now broadcasting, that we don't notice because we're ear deaf to it, that you don't notice when you walk outside. You can hear the vehicles going by on the street and all of that, just creating a lot of sound and vibration. And if you don't think that's a thing, get a hold of an engineer and talk to an engineer about driving across bridges and how they have to reinforce the bridges, but also give them pliability because there's a sound and a vibration that happens from all the vehicles driving on it. And if you don't do it, it'll shake itself loose and it'll crumble and fall into the water. They had to learn that the hard way as time has gone on around the world. And now that's why they have more suspension bridges, because that allows the bridge to ebb and flow with the vibration of the cars. You don't know it because you're driving on it. And you think, well, a lot of times you're driving on a bridge and you think that the ground is got divots in it from people driving on it. It's actually, the ground is actually moving under your vehicle, and you're not realizing that because it looks like to you don't see the wave. So you don't think that it's actually moving, and you're driving along going, well, that's weird because this place needs to be repaved because as I'm driving along and it feels like I'm doing this. That's the vibration. The same thing happens on land when there's a lot of people driving. Like here in California, we have Highway 99 and Highway 5, which are the two major arteries that go from the entire top of California to the bottom of California, almost in a straight line. There's so much traffic that drives on those, especially like 99, because it's so much older. It's been there for so long. When you get on it and you're driving, the road itself has divots like this as you're driving because of the vibration of all the cars driving, and they're doing that themselves, and the ground is moving. And so now it actually has divots that you drive in, and they have to go and level that stuff out all the time because the vibration of the cars is causing waves that are not moving, but they were. And so they're actually causing divots in the road. So when you're driving, you could actually see, you can't see them when you're driving, but if you went to the side of the road and looked, you would see that it actually has those. So the same thing happens to bridges, only the bridges will then fall down if they can't move. So they suspend them in a way and give joints in there so that the whole platforms can shift. And that way, all of the vibration goes to those hinge points along the pathway. And I know that's engineering you guys probably didn't want to know about, but it is true. So I'm trying to look at what you guys are talking about, see if there's any questions right here. So you have to realize that all of this ties in a way to the dynamic of who you are, to the dynamic of what's going on around you, and that these people knew about it in the past at a greater knowledge than we could ever imagine now. And we're just catching up and rediscovering it, that because of the time of the cataclysm with the flood, and most of the people who actually knew what all of that stuff meant were stifled or were killed or just died with the knowledge. And we didn't realize that this ancient knowledge was real and accurate, and that they actually knew about it. And some of them do, but they're not telling the world. And the ones that are, no one's listening to them because you don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about some old ancient crap. Just like when I talk about my book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways, that's what that is about. That's about this knowledge that everyone on this earth knew for all of time. And in our arrogance in the 21st century, we believe that all of those people were cavemen running around with loincloths on and leaves over their private parts, and that they are just idiots back then, didn't have any clue what was going on. Even though when you look at like the Greeks, they were the most intellectual minded people in the history of our world, even more so than currently. But when you look at them, most people go, yeah, they didn't know what they were talking about. They were all just a bunch of cavemen running around saber rattling because they didn't have any technology. So it has become, technology in our minds has become the measure of intelligence, where officially when you ask science, what's the measure of intelligence? It's just as silly. They say the size of your brain, the bigger brain you have, the more intelligent you are. And that's why we're the most intelligent person on the planet. And then people like me go, so dolphins, their brain is slightly larger than humans. Well, yeah, but they're not building buildings and technology, so they must not be intelligent. Whales, their brain is bigger than our entire body. Yeah, well, again, they're not building empires, and they're not attacking and murdering people and trying to take control of the world. So obviously, they must not be that intelligent. So the size of the brain becomes the worth and intelligence of a species until other species that we deem food it has a bigger brain than we do, and then they're not intelligent, and that's not really that. Then technology becomes that which is the measure of a societal structure until somebody like Giorgio Tsoukalos and the guys from Ancient Aliens goes, yeah, but it looks like aliens got here with a superior technology and gave that knowledge to them, and that's when they go demons, and they get religious all of a sudden. The devil and demons, and then now there's a god and a devil, and that dynamic. But then they try to tell you that there is no God. But they see how that works. They just change their narrative to suit to keep their narrative. So they change the same thing that happens with people who believe in flat Earth. When you start questioning it, they change the narrative, and they evolve with you to make sure that you can't prove them wrong. But they won't do anything to prove themselves right. Because if they were accurate, the people that are flat earthers just need to build a rocket ship and fire it into space with cameras and have it go boonk off of the firmament at the top, off of the dome. And they're like, no, because then you can't see it and you'll never see it and you'll just turn and then come back down. Okay, then fire one straight up and put telemetry on it. Because if you're right and you're accurate, it's going to splash into the water and it's not going to keep going. And it's not going to go into outer space. Because that's your theory. So do it. Why aren't they doing it? Very simple. Very simple way of doing it. There is a dome there and you can't get out. Then build a rocket and bounce it off the fucker and film it and put it on the air for everyone in the world. When you do that and you prove it without faking your own video, and you prove that there's a dome up there, the whole world will be on notice. You'll be the richest people in the history of the world because you'll be the hero of the world, and you will blow the whistle on the entire earth. And yet they don't try and do it. Why? Because they make too much money sitting around saying how much it is a certain way when it's not. So the same thing with climate activists. They can't actually prove that the climate is doing what it's doing. And every time they do say it's going to do and predict something, that time comes and goes and nothing ever happens. And then they just go, well, no, it's down there further. We found out it's further. It's slower than we thought. And they push it out far enough to where they're old and retired and rich before anybody can call them names. And then they don't care. They got their money and they're in the Bahamas and they let the other people behind them worry about it. It's the same thing. Because if you're old enough, and most of the people who believe in climate change are too young to remember this, from the beginning of the 1940s until the 1980s, they were telling us we were going into an ice age and we were all going to freeze. And then literally the next day, they got to a certain point, and the next day they went, no, wait, because all the money dried up and nobody believed them. No one believed them. They were saying nothing's happening. The temperature's not changing like you're saying. It's not a thing. When that got to a certain level and all their money dried up, they all of a sudden went, it's getting warmer. And the ice caps are going to melt and we're all going to die. It's going to flood. And they all said back in 1987 and 1989 that by the year 2005, the state of Florida would be 90% underwater. And most of the east coast of the United States and London would be underwater because the level would rise. And that meant that Louisiana would also be underwater. Right. And then Venice would be completely underwater. Like the whole city now would be at least a waist deep or a chest deep in water. And nothing's changed. Nothing changed from 1989 until 2025. So we're looking at 40 years later, and the sea level hasn't risen more than a fraction of an inch. And they said it was going to rise 10 feet. They stopped talking about that. And then just said that the climate change is going to make it warmer. Well, if it makes it warmer and the ice caps melt, then the sea should rise. But the sea's not rising. Never mind that now. It's just going to make it warmer. And we have all these storms. Yeah, storms are worse. And that's what they're doing. They just are kicking the can down the road, changing their narrative as they go, and then pointing out things that are happening and going, see, look at all these storms. They're a lot worse. Firestorms and earthquakes and fires and floods and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, give us money, right? And then when people stop believing that, they'll go to another narrative, and they'll probably go back to, because you won't remember it because you're not old enough, they'll go back to, we were wrong. We're going into an ice age. Give us money. Send me money, send me green, heaven you will meet. Make your contribution and you'll get a better seat. Bow to Leper Messiah. That's a song by Metallica in 1983 when they were talking about the same thing. Okay, so let's see. Amanda says, let's get back on track. Amanda's asking a question. How about some birds, though their brains are tiny, right? They're tiny, yet some know how to make tools and use their technology to help them with their food. Absolutely. I've watched them take a walnut and crack it on a rock, an egg, crack it on a rock to eat it, right? Seriously, they're very intelligent. Crows are very intelligent, right? Oh, then you're just saying that right there. Use our technology to help them with their food, i.e. crows, right? Ravens putting nuts on a road for cars to crash into. Same thing with squirrels. They'll run out and they'll put nuts on the road so the cars will run them over, and then they'll run out and pick up the meat out of the nut and run off and eat it and come back and do it. Yeah, absolutely. Adapting to their environment and utilizing humans and our nature of driving down the road, and they're smart enough to do that. It's actually proven, though, with squirrels, and it might be the same with the birds. I know for a fact squirrels because I happened to watch a documentary on it. Because people said, how is it that squirrels will bury food just before winter and they'll remember where to go and dig up that food to be able to eat it, to get themselves through winter. So they actually started studying the squirrel's brain. Their brain gets larger as it gets cooler and starts to go towards winter. And they go around and they can bury up to 40 different places of food and still remember where all of them are, to go back and get the food stores that they've buried all over the place. And then in the springtime, their brain shrinks slightly because they don't need that extra memory. So something physiologically changes in them by the season to make sure that they can survive. So literally they've evolved to where their brain expands and to help them. But I agree with you. One of my birds, my totems, are both the blackbirds, the ravens, and the crows. So I literally believe that they are very, very intelligent in a way that you have to wonder, they have that little brain. How can they be so intelligent? They seem self-aware. So we still haven't been able to figure that stuff out, right? To find out which type of thing that's happening to them there. Is it because they're just some of them that are conscious? Because here's the thing, when something happens to the crows, if a certain person attacks crows and kills a crow, those crows that witness it pass that knowledge on to other crows, and they know the particular person killed one of their relatives. They also know that with other animals. So they learn genetically or somehow, culturally by their ancestors. So we haven't figured out if they're communicating through telepathy to one another and telling stories or not. And they learn, and all animals seem to be doing that. So there's something about them that is either self-aware or in some way telepathic or empathic, because they're capable of passing on knowledge to others in their species without having direct communication with them. And they will learn and be able to do a task that someone else learns. If it's vital to their survival, it gets passed on. So we're as a science today trying to figure out if that is something that is genetic DNA memory that is being passed on, or if there's something cognitive that's happening. And science can't truly answer that question yet to find out. And then when you look at like Einstein's theory of relativity and string theory and these type of things, where not just the idea of a big giant string moving through the universe, but the relativity and this quantum entanglement, that they're not sure if that's more prevalent in the universe than first thought. Science is trying to figure that out, and moving into the field of which I have it underneath. No, it's Michael Talbot's. It's over there. I showed it to you guys before. Michael Talbot doing a definitive timeline of the holographic universe, showing the evolution of we humans discovering that the universe was holographic, and then furthering that ideology that science is now starting to realize in the mainstream science in physics that our brains work that way, and it might be that the universe itself works that way. So instead of having this lobe of my brain being in charge of, say, the memories of day-to-day tasks that I do, it's my entire brain. And when they did with squirrels and other animals, mice, where they started dissecting the brain and chopping it into smaller pieces, and then still having them do the same complex tasks, they found that even if they took the brain out and flipped it upside down, they would still have the information. And trust me, that is accurate. I've read the scientific research on that. Michael Talbot shows some of that in his book, The Holographic Universe, that he wasn't that he did, but that they did in the past. And he names the doctors that did that at the turn of the century. So don't get mad that, that people are doing that, but they do that sort of stuff. Okay. So in science, to figure things out. However, they're realizing that the universe itself seems to be holographic, hence the term of Talbot's book, The Holographic Universe. Okay. And I've been studying that, not his book, but the holographic universe, since I was in physics in college, because of all of these theories and relativity and quantum entanglement and the like. Because of these things sort of seem to reoccur in the universe. And when we're trying to figure out the universe, all of that is coming to play. So what does that have to do with Ra? And I'll get back to it. Everything, because the archetypes that we're finding are universal, that are contributing to our individual persons archetypes. And we have several of these archetypes, including our own chakras, that we now know the universe has all of those as well. Everything in the universe, it's the same building blocks. So science is now starting to catch up to what everyone knew in the past for forever, prior to our technology. With our technology, the only thing we're doing is rediscovering that everyone in the past already knew all this. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's coming out. You can't change facts. You can just pretend they're not facts. Okay. So they're starting to catch up. When I was in physics, I said at the time, and I was an outlier for saying this, I said at the time that, and I still say this, that the entire reason why they don't know what's going on in the universe is because they're denying the spiritual aspect of the universe itself. And they're trying to stay in the physical only to discover and mandate the universe itself as a thing. And in doing so, they're literally shutting out and denying the very thing that they're looking for, because they can't find it in the physical. It's not in the physical, but they're trying to find it otherwise. And this is why people like Lao Tzu, 634, approximately 634 BC, said, he who gropes for it will not grasp it. Okay. And other things. He who searches for it, seeks it, will not find it, because that's all in the physical, looking for the land of milk and honey, the fountain of youth. All of these things do not exist in the physical plane, someplace for you to go and drink from or taste and eat and to become immortal. Those don't exist in the physical plane at all. Those things are metaphors that exist in the spiritual plane. And most of what they're looking for, free energy and the like, doesn't exist in the physical plane, because the physical plane is the place of doing, not the place of being. It's a place of manifestation, which in and of itself suggests doing. Something that you're doing is you're manifesting, casting spells. You're using your spirituality, your mind, your spirit, your soul to manifest in a physical plane in this matrix something. And in this matrix, it takes time for that to manifest, because time exists here, because we are in a place of time. Okay. So Ra is talking about stepping outside of the physical plane, and then the realization that there's these archetypes that manifest and that rule us, and this is what we're getting into in this part of the conversation. All right, let me put this back up here after I just spent like 30 minutes going down that rabbit hole, and then I'll take a look and see if you guys said anything. And so some of you guys are looking it up, right? So Joanne says, I got an Osiris, Isis, and on candle holders. Oh, okay. So you're talking about that. Yeah. So, but I agree with Jamie. She said different types of intelligence. That's definitely a thing. And and I think so. I think that's a manifest intelligence within animals that is different because they're ruled by their solar plexus chakra, and that's nature, and they're in tune with nature, which is intuition. And I think they're getting a lot of knowledge from intuition. And I'm actually discussing that in the book that I'm currently writing, that is a thing. That's what we call the gut feeling, right? So, Cassie said, I thought you were, I don't know, were you talking to me? No, you were talking to Penny. So Penny might be, I don't know what you guys are talking about. You guys are looking up your stuff and trying to figure out who's what in the pantheon of the zodiac from the, whatchamacallit. So I'm way behind your guys' comments now. So let me go up here and read them while Ra is talking with the next question here.
Question 90.30. Questioner, I have an observation on archetype number 1 made by name, and I request comment on it by Ra. I will read it. The matrix of the mind is the conscious mind and is sustained by the power of the spirit as symbolized by the star which flows to it through the subconscious mind. It contains the will which is signified by the scepter of power in the magician's hand. All of creation is made through the power of the will directed by the conscious mind of the magician, and the bird in the cage represents the illusion in which the self seems trapped. The magician represents minus all the radiance of being manifested as the creation through which each entity moves. Answer, I am Ra. As this instrument is becoming somewhat weary, we shall not begin this considerable discussion. We would request that this series of observations be repeated at the outset of the next working. We would suggest that each concept be discussed separately or, if appropriate, a pair of concepts be related one to the other within the concept complex. This is slow work but shall make the eventual building of the concept complexes more smoothly accomplished. Were we to have answered the observations as read by you at this space-time, as much space-time would have been given to the untangling of various concepts as to the building up of what were very thoughtful perceptions. May we ask if there are any brief queries at this time? Question 90.31. Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Answer, I am Ra. It is well that the appliances for the arms were placed upon the instrument. We ask that continued vigilance be accorded these distortions which are, if anything, more distorted towards disease than at our previous cautionary statement. All is well, my friends, you are conscientious and faithful in your alignments. We appreciate your fastidiousness. I am Ra. I leave you now, rejoicing merrily in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
All right, so that was session 90, the second half of it. So we'll go into session 91. I believe that it should pop up on its own here and go into and switch on its own because I think I have it queued. Yeah, so here's part 1 of part 2, 91.
I am Ra.
26.
I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 91.1. Questioner, could you first please give me the condition of the instrument? Answer, I am Ra. It is as previously stated. Question 91.2. Questioner, I have listed the different minds and would like to know if they are applied in this particular aspect. First, we have the cosmic mind, which is, I would think, the same for all sublogua like our sun. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 91.3. Questioner, a sublogos such as our sun, then, in creating its own particular evolutionary experience, refines the cosmic mind or, shall we say, articulates it by its own additional bias or biases. Is this the correct observation? Answer, I am Ra. It is a correct observation, with the one exception that concerns the use of the term addition, which suggests the concept of that which is more than the all-mind. Instead, the archetypical mind is a refinement of the all-mind in a pattern peculiar to the sublogos choosing. Question 91.4. Questioner: then the very next refinement that occurs as the cosmic mind is refined is what we call the archetypical mind. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. Yes. Question 91.5. Questioner: then this creates, I would assume, the planetary or racial mind. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. No. Question 91.6. Questioner: what is the origin of the planetary or racial mind? Answer: I am Ra. This racial or planetary mind is, for this logos, a repository of biases remembered by the mind, body, spirit complexes which have enjoyed the experience of this planetary influence. Question 91.7. Questioner: now, some...
Okay, so let me pull up. I got that. I forgot to do this. There. Now, those of you who are around the world that have the visuals, you can pause right here quickly, or just leave, or just right now take a screenshot. If you haven't looked that up, the Egyptian astrology I have up on the screen for you too, the zodiac for the Egyptians, so that you can see. I forgot to do that. I was talking and forgot to do that. So if you're not in the Law of One chat and you're around the world somewhere and you have the visuals for the MP4 broadcast, if you're listening in MP3, you're going to have to Google that stuff yourself, or go to whatever search engine that you use. But if you're currently watching on MP4, you can see that it's up on your screen right now. I'll leave it up for a couple more seconds so you can take a screenshot of it, or you can Google it and see which one that I was talking about. But whatever format you use, when you look it up, they're all the same. That was the one that somebody posted on Facebook. So I found that online and put it up there. I was talking about that, and so I put that up in the Law of One chat. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue with the Law of One. If you're around the world and listening on the MP3 broadcast, just use whatever search engine that you have and look up Egyptian sun signs or Egyptian zodiac signs, and then you can look up an image of that. Okay, let's continue here.
Some entities on this planet evolved from second density into third, and some were transferred from other planets to recycle in third density here. Did the ones who were transferred here to recycle in third density and to the planetary or racial mind? Answer: I am Ra. Not only did each race add to the planetary mind, but also each race possesses a racial mind. Thus we made this distinction in discussing this portion of mind. This portion of mind is formed in the series of seemingly non-simultaneous experiences which are chosen in freedom of will by the mind, body, spirit complexes of the planetary influence.
Right. So I'll let this continue, but I wanted to reiterate that in the line of discussion that we were talking about, including birds, and I think it was Fiona. Was it Fiona that brought up the magpies there in Australia? Which, yeah, crazy, right? I've talked to Brooke about them. And how intelligent that they are. Facial recognition. I think that was who it was that brought that up. I apologize if I said the wrong person. It might have been Amanda. It was Amanda. Amanda talking about the magpies in Australia. And I talked to Brooke, and she was telling me about that same thing. Facial recognition, crazily. So, but here you can see that Ra is answering that, right? Not only did each of the races add to the planetary mind, but also each race possesses a racial mind. Okay, thus we made this distinction in discussing this portion of mind. Okay, so now when Ra is referring to mind, that's a collective consciousness. So again, you have that archetype that governs slightly over a particular race. So a species would have the same. Do you see? So this portion of the mind is formed in a series of seemingly non-simultaneous experiences, which are chosen in freedom of mind by the mind-body-spirit complexes of the planetary influence. Therefore, although this Akashic planetary or racial mind is indeed let Ra continue with it.
Therefore, although this Akashic, planetary, or racial mind is indeed a root of mind, it may be seen in sharp differentiation from the deeper roots of mind, which are not a function of altering memory, if you will. We must ask your patience at this time. This channel has become somewhat unclear due to the movement of the cover which touches this instrument. We ask that the opening sentences be repeated and the breath expelled. The microphones attached to the cover upon the instrument were pulled slightly as a rug was being placed over a noisy tape recorder. The circle of one was walked. Breath was expelled 2 feet above the instrument's head from her right to her left, and the circle of one was walked again as requested. Question 91.8. I am Ra.
Right. So that happens sometimes, right? Even if you're casting yourself, casting a spell or, casting a circle to work within, if you're a magic user, sometimes something happens and you made a mistake and didn't realize it, or you do realize it, or something is still interfering, and then you realize you made a mistake by doing that, and then you have to stop things and actually recast a circle to work within that place to keep out any interference from the mundane world, and in fact also up to and including negative energies out and not being able to interfere with your workspace when you're doing that. So if you're one of those people that is strictly a religious person and a zealot, you'll probably think that I'm the devil and possessed by a demon by saying that, because I must be a demon and the devil if I'm talking about extrasensory perception, because that's usually what they teach you, because they can't control that, right? So Penny said, Leo, so the major mind, or is the racial mind, is that why some of us can feel trees, birds more because that we have been them? Yes, that is part of that. Penny, that is part of that. Let me put that up on the screen for those of you around the world that want to take a look at what she has just mentioned. Yeah, that's part of it. And also, when you become in tune with nature, as your ascension starts going. So first of all, if you were, a lot of times you'll find, let's just go back to starting with something mundane. You'll see that somebody who, say, is European in descent in this life, for some reason, has an affinity for Japanese everything in their house. Why? When you look into that and regress them through hypnosis, you find out they were Japanese in their last life. So they bring that. It's an echo. They bring that residual. They bring that residual into their life, the memory of that, the echo of that into this next life. Some people who say drowned in their past life, scared to death of water in this life. They don't want to swim. They don't want to get near it. The same thing. Some people are afraid of fire. You regress them and find out they died by burning at the stake, say, or in a fire in a house. Some of that stuff bleeds over into your next life. So if you were an animal, sometimes that animal becomes your spirit totem in lives that you have when you're a human, because you were in tune with that. Beyond that, when you start ascending on the spiritual path of being in service to others, you will then become more in tune with nature as you balance your chakras, specifically the solar plexus, because that is the chakra of nature. So when you start balancing that and solidifying that, that's the gut feeling that we have, that is our intuition. All animals are tuned into that. So they have the aspect of nature, the nature of the beast. They are all in tune with nature. And that's called the quickening. And the only place they talk about that is like in the old movie from the 1980s of Highlander. And they talk about being able to become in tune with nature and being able to feel that. There's a scene where Corner McLeod is being trained by what's his name, Ramirez, and he's teaching him how to reach out with his feelings and feel this stag that is there, and feel the energy from that stag, which is the energy of nature, and be charged with that energy. And while that's happening there, he starts feeling that in there, and he's like, I can feel that energy. And he said, that is the quickening. And then they started running. And when they started running, the stag also started running, and they were sharing that the feeling of excitement and energy from the earth. And the two of them were running down the beach, and the stag was running up the side of the mountain, and they were feeling it and it was feeling them. and that's called the quickening. And they talked about that in there, but didn't explain any further in details in the movie what that was about. So as you become more in tune with nature, nature becomes more in tune with you. Nature realizes that you're not snubbing it. It's not snubbing you. You're no longer a danger to it. You're now living within nature. Very spiritual races of people on the earth, Aborigines, original people in Australia, original people in the North American continent or the Americas, what we call natives, Native Americans, Native Canadians, and the Aztecs and the Mayans, and these people that have chosen to be more spiritual minded, living with nature, not against it, those people become more in tune with nature. They can communicate with nature. They can communicate with animals. People have called me Dr. Doolittle. Many people throughout time on this earth in this life have called me Dr. Doolittle because I can communicate with animals. I don't have a special ability. I am in tune with nature. I am very nature oriented. I am a green man. I am a Merlin. I have the green man tattooed on my back. I have this is part of my being is to be in tune with nature, and part of my religion to be in tune with nature, not just the Christian pantheon, even though I am a Christian minister, to be in tune with nature. So therefore, I have this weird ability to understand, more importantly, animals and how they think and how they move and why they do these things. And they can pick up telepathically what I'm thinking, and I pick that up from them. And people who are mundane, living in the flesh, living in this matrix, fighting nature, and trees are just there for me to either burn as firewood or make my house out of, and that's all they're good for. And maybe I need them for shade, and that's it. And animals are just something you eat or a pet that you abuse and have around the house and kick at when they're in your way. Those people are snubbed by nature. Nature runs away from them because they are in fact self-serving, and they're going to do damage to nature at all costs because they're the most important thing. So those people will always forever believe that I am insane because they have to, because the only way they can survive is to believe that they are the best thing there is and be arrogant and say, this whole place is just ours for the taking. All of that. They're just food. It's just food. It's just a dog. It's just a cat. It's just a bird. Just a chicken. Get it out of the way. It's an insect, because they believe that they are the most important thing. They're self-serving. So as you become more in service to others, and you become moving up in the ascension, you can't help but become more in tune with nature. However, to get back to your question, yes, if you were one of these animals, if you were a fish, you will love swimming, right? If you're a dog, you will love animals. You'll love dogs. You might even hate cats because you don't like cats. If you were a bird, you're going to love birds, and you're going to love flying, and you know what I mean? You will pick up echoes of your own spiritual essence in what you were in throughout time, right? Joanne says, it's amazing how when I lay on the ground, I feel so different. Let me put it up on the screen so you can see what I'm reading. I feel so different when I stand up. I did a healing meditation lying on the ground in the park. I went so deep. It was amazing. Standing up again was like I was waking up from a deep sleep. Just love nature, right? Because you're in tune. When you become more in tune with nature, then you're not in tune with the concrete jungle so much. I worked for the last 10 years of my life in construction and maintenance as a contractor. And I was on job sites most of the time. So that meant rough ground. That meant dirt, gravel, and grass and the like. I was more comfortable walking on the regular uneven earth, which most people are not comfortable walking on because they're used to walking on a flat surface of the concrete jungle with asphalt or concrete or tile on the floors. That I preferred to walk on natural ground that to other people would be like having sea legs. It's rocky, and they might trip and sprain their ankle or twist in a hole or something and slip because the rocks are off balance. And I would walk across that like I was walking across water. And I loved every minute of it. So I enjoyed that part of my life because I was more in a natural setting most of the time when I was working, because I was always working going, even if I was going to a house and was going to be working on the gas, underground gas or electric or water, or something even above ground that had to do with that, I would always end up in the back of the house, the sides of the houses, or wherever that stuff is on the property. And those places are rarely, driveway and stuff like that, and parkway. So I felt far more comfortable doing that. I still do. Whenever if I'm walking down the street and there's a patch of earth that is there, or a strip of earth, I will walk on that more than I will on the sidewalk or whatever, because I still prefer feeling nature under my feet, even if I'm not barefoot, right? And so I love that, Joanne, that you actually were in this nice meditation, deep meditation, right? Amanda says it literally scared of heights irrationally. So I know I fell off of some sort of cliff in another life. That's very possible. That is very possible. And if you have that belief and you know that is a thing, then chances are that you may have died from a high fall, or someone may have shoved you. You don't know the answer to that question, right? And so because of that, you're afraid of heights in this life. It's very possible. Very possible. So you believe that you did. So I would say look into that. You probably did if you have somebody regress you. I've become a traveling gypsy. Amanda goes on to say, I've been a traveling gypsy in a caravan because my lovey Theo Tidors. I don't know what those words are. Lovey Theo Tidors. I'm not sure what that means. That you said there. That might be something. That's probably an Australian thing. I'm not quite sure what that means. You translate that for me in English, into American English. Penny says, I talk to my dog wood tree every night. Oh, dogwood tree. I talk to my dogwood tree every night. We have talked about the tree yeah. So, I mean, that's literally, the trees do feel, they know what's going on. I do that. I knock on trees. I talk to them. I live in a place called Heritage Oaks with a bunch of oak trees and heritage oak trees. And nobody does anything. They just walk by them all the time. So when I'm out and about and I'm walking along, I'm always walking up to the trees and, becoming a tree hugger. I walk up to the trees, put an arm around the tree and pat the tree. How you doing? How's it going? I know you're there. I'm aware of your energy and I love you. And I'm thank you for the shade that you give me in my house so that I stay cool in the summertime. And I go and I do that. I walk out and I'm going to my vehicle and I'm walking over to the tree and going, how you doing? How you doing today? Ladies, how are you doing today? And walking out. And I have that habit of when I was younger, my mom had a plant and it was sitting there and it looked like it was dead in a pot. And my mom was about to throw it away. I said, what are you doing with that plant? And she said, well, I'm going to throw it away. I killed it, unfortunately. I said, hold on, let me see that. And I started pulling away the dead leaves. And I looked and there was like a little patch of green still on the plant. I said, I don't think this plant's dead. I think it's just root bound, Mom. And I think it's dying because of it, but I don't think it's dead yet. I think it's mostly dead. It's okay. She said, well, I'm going to get rid of it. So well, let me have it. So I took it and I repotted it and I got rid of the soil that was there, and I shaved the soil down really thin and I added to another rich soil and added that to it. And it started growing back. It had been root bound and it sucked all the nutrients out of the soil that she had in there. And she was unaware of that. And I got it to grow and it started growing back. And I actually kept it. And when it grew back, it was like an ivy plant. It started growing tentacles. Ivy does that. So I actually took it back to her house and I put it up in the corner of her dining room in the house. And I hung it from the ceiling. And eventually the flowers or the limbs were growing so long that I put them up along the walls above the ceiling. And I put nails up there and hooks up there, and I was hooking it, and it would grow, and I'd hook it up to another one, and it grew 8 feet on both sides, and it got so heavy that it broke the off of the hook in the roof and went down and crashed on the ground and broke the pot. So I grabbed it and I put it into a bigger pot and put a stand up for it to sit on and set it on the stand, and it didn't break and rip any of the things. It just came loose. Luckily for it, it was able to slither out and not hurt itself. Put it back up there and put it back, and it grew. And I don't know what happened to it, but eventually she moved out of there. I don't know if she ever took the plant with her or gave it to somebody, but that plant flourished and loved it, loved life. I talked to it every day, and I would go and I would spritz it and wipe the dust off its leaves, and I played different music. And for some reason, I got the idea that it liked heavy metal, not classical, which a lot of plants like classical. This one liked heavy metal. When I played heavy metal, that thing would grow like 2 inches in a day. Loved heavy metal, loved the vibration of the music, just adored that. And I was okay with that because I was working out at the time in my room, and I would work out to heavy metal, and that plant loved it. And so I told my mom, you got to play some rock music or heavy metal for this plant. It loves it. And she had the plant for years after that, and she thought it was dead. And I would just come over and check the soil, and every now and then I'd say, let's repot this into another more soil that's more rich. And my mom was able to keep it alive after a while. So you have to be in tune with it, listen to them, trust yourself. I teach people this all the time. When it comes to, I want to know who my higher self is. I want to know who it is that I am in a past life. You already know who your higher self is. You already know who your guides are. Joanne can talk to this. I mean, all of you guys that are out here in this audience probably right now can speak to this, to the world, that you have to trust your guides. You have to trust the information that you're getting. If you're a medium, you have to trust yourself and the information that you're getting from your guides or from the person you're channeling or communicating with on the other side. And not doubt, and just do and answer and say these things, and you'll find that you'll get validation from the client that you're working with. So the same thing when people say, I want to know who my higher self is. I'm like, well, see, the problem is you're blocking yourself, because you're introducing yourself saying, I want to know who my higher self is, as if it's a foreign entity that is someone besides you. So you're saying that I have a higher self and I want to know who that is. So you're actually excluding yourself from being the same, from being that person. So you have to get past that and start saying, I am. That's why when Moses on the mountain, when he was talking to the burning bush, God was telling him to go and talk to Ramses II and tell him to release my people. He said, they're going to ask me who you are. Who do I say? What do I say your name is? Who do I say sent me? And he said, I am. Tell them I am sent me. Because I am being, I am. So consciousness, I am. So you have to say, I am my higher self, and I can communicate with my higher self because it is me. So you have to trust that, and everything comes from that place. So when you move into your higher self and you realize that is you, and that the aspect that is you down here as the individual, the name that you have in this place is a fraction, is a splinter of your higher self. And it's okay to have this distinct personality down here and still be that person there, because ultimately that is who you are. So when you start associating yourself with the higher self, then you start to be able to become more in tune with nature and everything else, because you're not coming from a standpoint of I am alone and I am one down here. You're coming from a standpoint of I am outside of the physical plane, and I am a light being. I am a light body. I am a light being that is immortal, and therefore all of this is something that I can interact with, not just what I can physically interact with down here. And you have to learn that about yourself and realize that about yourself, right? So Amanda says, I had a shark cage dive charter that played AC/DC, right, and Metallica to attract the sharks. They said heavy metal was the best. There you go, right? Amanda said that, going on a shark dive charter, and literally they played AC/DC and Metallica because it attracted more sharks. So the vibration of those two bands' music would bring more sharks in to the cages. Isn't that something? So the sharks in that area seem to like AC/DC and Metallica. They are individuals, and they go by vibrations. They go by electromagnetic communications of waveforms, just like we do, right? Cassie said, I do the same thing. She said, I do the same every time I like. I thank the trees and give them my heart energy, and then they give it back. Absolutely. If you actually listen, you can communicate. If you pay attention, animals do communicate with each other and with us. And all you have to do is trust that. I look at my cat and she's just staring at me, and I'm like, what am I missing? What are you telling me? And then I'll look right in her eyes, and all of a sudden I'll go, oh, I haven't checked your food, and you're out of food and water in the bedroom. Okay, I'll go by and look. I go in there and she's out of food and water in the bedroom. Some people would say, you just noticed it when you walked by subconsciously, and when the cat was looking at you, you just figured it out. Those are people that are living in the flesh, and everything has to have a physical flesh explanation for it, and there is nothing else that is, so you couldn't have known the cat's not communicating with you. It's just a cat. Doesn't have a soul. It's not real. It's just food for me or a pet that I can abuse. Therefore, they cannot communicate with nature because they're living against it, not with it. And therefore, it is as alien to them as the possibility that the earth is round, not flat, and that there is space, and that the sun will burn you, and the moon is not made of cheese, is actually foreign to them, right? So because of that, everything has to have a physical, mundane explanation, and everything else is just insane and made up, because they can't believe it, don't believe it, and will not believe it, because they're not in charge. They're not the God creator of the universe. And you have to then believe that they are in charge. That's why self-serving people who run governments will tell you, we're in charge and we can do whatever we want to you. And they have to get you to believe that and become afraid of them. And if you don't become afraid of them, they will beat you and torture you into submission, or lock you in jail, or get rid of you because you're infecting other people with this notion of free thinking. Can't have that. Okay. Let's continue here. Let me go back in full screen for the law of one and get back to the law of one. So you guys have any other questions, just let me know and I'll answer them here. But let me go over here and we'll press play and we'll continue.
We communicate now. Question 91.9. Questioner, were we successful in re-establishing clear contact? Answer, I am Ra. There was the misstep which then needed to be re-repeated. This was done. The communication is once again clear. We enjoyed the humorous aspects of the necessary repetitions. Question 91.10. Questioner, what occurred when the microphone cords were slightly moved? Answer, I am Ra. The link between the instrument's mind, body, spirit complex and its yellow ray, chemical, physical vehicle was jarred. This caused some maladjustment of the organ you call the lungs, and, if the repair had not been done, would have resulted in a distorted physical complex condition of this portion of the instrument's physical vehicle. Question 91.11. Questioner, what kind of distortion? Answer, I am Ra. The degree of distortion would depend upon the amount of neglect. The ultimate penalty, shall we say, for the disturbing of the physical vehicle is the death, in this case by what you would call the congestive heart failure. As the support group was prompt, there should be little or no distortion experienced by the instrument. Question 91.12. Questioner, why does such a very minor effect like the slight movement of the microphone cord result in this situation, not mechanically or chemically, but philosophically? If you can answer this question. Answer, I am Ra. We can only answer mechanically, as there is no philosophy to the reflexes of physical vehicular function. There is what you might call the silver cord reflex, that is, when the mind, body, spirit complex dwells without the environs of the physical shell and the physical shell is disturbed, the physical shell will reflexively call back the absent enlivener, that is, the mind, body, spirit complex, which is connected with what may be metaphysically seen as what some of your philosophers have called the silver cord. If this is done suddenly, the mind, body, spirit complex will attempt entry into the energy web of the physical vehicle without due care, and the effect is as if one were to stretch one of your elastic bands and let it shrink rapidly. The resulting snap would strike hard at the anchored portion of the elastic band. The process through which you as a group go in recalling this instrument could be likened unto taking this elastic and gently lessening its degree of tension until it was without perceptible stretch.
And if you have ever been out of your body at all and been either spirit walking or astral projecting or doing it in your sleep while you were sleeping, and you had that effect happen to you when you came flying back into your body, you would wake up with the distinct feeling that you were in the air, and you would slam into your body and bounce off of your bed, and it usually scares the bejeebies out of you. And you jump like crazy and think, what? And sometimes it hurts. And sometimes it scares the shit out of you. Pardon my word, my English, my American. And sometimes it just jolts you, and you're like, what the? And you're trying to figure out what woke you up. So any time that you stay out too long, or something is going to happen, or something is happening near you and it startles something, or if you get lost when you're out of body or you've been away from your body for too long, your that silver cord will yank you back. So you can't get lost. People go, what if I master projecting and I get lost? You can't get lost. You're attached to your body and with that silver cord. And when you move out and you're running around doing things, if you don't know where you're at and you get lost and how do I get back to my body? If you wait long enough, it's going to yank you back. But the problem is when it does, it pulls you back just like a rubber band. If you take a rubber band and you hold it in between your thumb and your finger and you grab it with the other hand and you pull it up and you snap it on your leg, it hurts. It comes in hot, it comes in fast, and you hit. And the same thing happens to you. Your spirit, your soul comes into your body and it comes in high and hard, fast and hard, and you bounce in the air and you wake up and you literally have the feeling of motion. You have the feeling that you were in the air, that you were and you were slammed into your body, and it scares the bejeebies out of you. So so when you learn astral projecting, when you learn spirit walking, we teach you how to come back on your own so that you become a little bit more gently into your body. But fear not, you cannot get lost and never come back to your body. You know, the universe doesn't work that way. It will snap you back into place. If you've been out too long. Then he said, yep, in capital letters and started laughing. And Shelly said, yeah, right. Yes, right. So that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And sometimes it's crazy, right? Penny said I was 12. The first time I fell back into my body, I woke up with a whole body impression on my bed, right? Like you slammed right into the bed and there you were, right? And then Cassie said that literally just happened to me a few weeks ago. Slam into the bed. And I was like, what the fuck was that? Yep, that happens. It does it. And when it does it, it scares the shit out of you. You wake up suddenly and you literally feel the motion of slamming into the bed. Your whole body jolts and you jump up. You usually sit right up in bed and you look around like, what just happened? Did somebody hit me or jump on me or what? But you were out of body too long. Either something was happening and your body thought it needed you, or you were gone too long and forgot to come back in time and your body yanks you back in. It's not a fun thing. And once you know that it is a thing, the next time it happens, you wake up and you go, oh, Jesus. And then you start laughing. Well, that happened. And then you giggle about it and lay back down and try to relax to go back to sleep. And usually the adrenaline is pumping as well, right? So, yeah, and some people will be like, that's not a thing. But if you film people and that happens and they catch it on film, they've proven that that is a thing and that it is a jolt. The entire body jolts. And you can tell that something happened that literally the body reacts as if something flew and landed back in the body. Just the description that I discussed to you, the physical body has that same reaction without being able to see the spirit enter into the body.
Question 91.13. Questioner, to get back to what we were talking about, would the different races of this planet be from different planets in our local vicinity or the planets of nearby Logwa which have evolved through their second density experiences, and would they create the large number of different races that we experience on this planet? Answer, I am Ra. There are correctnesses to your supposition. However, not all races and sub-races are of various planetary origins. We suggest that in looking at planetary origins one observes not the pigmentation of the integument, but the biases concerning interactions with other selves and definitions regarding the nature of the self. Question 91.14. Questioner, how many different planets have supplied the individuals which now inhabit this planet? Answer, I am Ra. This is perceived by us to be unimportant information, but harmless. There are 3 major planetary influences upon your planetary sphere besides those of your own second density derivation, and 13 minor planetary groups in addition to the above. Question 91.15.
Okay, so let me reiterate that, right? Right, Ross says, so the question was how many different planets have supplied the past tense. So he's not talking about currently, but he's saying past tense, supplied individuals which now inhabit the planet Earth. So how many planets? So Ross said this is perceived by us as unimportant information, but harmless. There are three major planetary influences upon your planetary sphere, besides those of your own second density diveration of and 13 minor planetary groups in addition to the above. Okay, so 13, that's 17. 13 plus did you say 4 or 3? 3. So okay, so 13 plus 3, so 16 planets. There are 16 planets that have contributed the population of souls that are currently inhabiting planet Earth. The three major ones are Mars, Maldek, and this one. Mars, Maldek, wait a minute, who am I missing? Saturn. Mars, Maldek, Saturn, and Earth. Okay. So those are the three, and because Saturn was not Saturn. Yes, Saturn. No, Venus. So, pardon me, Venus. So those, and some would say, that planet 10X planet, because they always try to say there's one on the other side of the sun that we can't see, and they've gone to look and there's not. Everyone's like, no, we can't see it because it's on the other side of the sun and it's rotating in perfect synchronicity to us. They sent a probe out there to find out if that was happening, and it wasn't. And it did an orbit around the sun, and there's no planet over there that is our twin that is on the other side of the thing. So 16 planets currently in this sector of the Milky Way galaxy have contributed to the population, and that was 40 years ago. There's a few more than that currently, because that was when the population of wanderers at the time was about 600,000 souls, and now we're 86% of the population. So currently, we're looking at well over 100 planets currently. Honestly, possibly more than that, possibly as high as 500 planets that are currently, because at the time, a population of the Earth in 1984 or 1982, when this took place, was only 2.7 billion souls, and we're now at 8 billion. Okay, so we're exponentially larger amount of souls on this Earth currently. So at the time in 1982, when this was being channeled, 16 planets contributed to the population of this Earth. Souls, not physical beings flying here in spaceships, souls that are in the human bodies. And now it's well upwards around 500 planets that are people have come from to occupy physical bodies on this Earth currently. Whether you believe that or not doesn't matter to me, because it is true. All right, let's continue.
Questioner, thank you. One more question before we start on the specific questions in regard to archetypes. Do all Logua evolving after the veil have 22 archetypes? Answer, I am Ra. No. Question 91.16. Questioner, is it common for Logua to have 22 archetypes, or is this relatively unique to our Logos? Answer, I am Ra. The system of sevens is the most articulated system yet discovered by any experiment by any Logos in our octave. Question 91.17.
Okay, so let's reiterate that. Right? Is it common for Logi to have 22 archetypes, or is this relatively unique to our Logos? Ra's answer. The system of sevens is the most articulated system yet discovered by any experiment, by any Logos in our octave. Okay? So the system of sevens, 7 major arcana, okay? System of sevens. So where does 7 take you? 7 and 7 is 14. 14 and 14 is 28. Okay? So 4 times 7 is 28. So 3 times 7 is 21. Okay? So the system of sevens. Okay? So the archetypes are aspected that way. So we think we only have 7 chakras. And I keep telling you that we're going to get to 12 very quickly, but it will move to 14s. And then we have the different enigmas, of mathematics. And if you count in 12s and not in 10s, you get to a different mathematical equation. But if you look at everything being in 7s, as far as archetypes, then you're going to find that that is completely different. Hence the 22 card tarot decks. Wait, Leo, that's not 3 times 7, that's 21. I don't understand how you get the 22 out of that. Let me put my camera back on so you guys can see me here for this description. I don't understand how you get that 22. And then someone said last weekend that, well, my deck only has 21 cards, but it has a 0 card. Okay. So when you count the chakras, and you count and you start looking at the chakras and getting more than just the 7, you start looking at, there's something that everybody keeps missing. Everyone keeps missing the tree in the tree of life. The tree is a thing. So when you look at like the Viking tree of life, Yggdrasil, you count how many worlds there are, and then you count the tree itself, and you count the aspects of the tree itself, you find out that there is more than 7. It moves to 10. If you look at the Hebrew and the Chinese tree of life, they have 10 and the tree itself. So they're quickly at 11. And if you actually look, they have sub-logi as well, and they quickly get to 14. You look, the Chinese are the same, right? So the Asians, and then when you look at the Egyptians, it's the same. So what's missing is the tree. We have 7 chakras and a tree, an endocrine system, the physical plane. Okay. So when you start realizing that, and that we're more than 7, and that there's 2 above and 2 below, that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 minimum, with the physical body being another aspect. This is the tree, the tree of life. Same thing with the universe itself, okay? So the physical is a chakra and an archetype. People don't count that. Space is a physical archetype. That is the tree of life. That is what binds all of the universe. The mitochondrial from the Star Wars saga of that which is binding the force. The mitochondrial is what broadcasts along the tree of life. The force is the energy that moves, that binds all of us. What is that? That's the tree of life. So the force in that genre is the tree of life, and the mitochondrial is the energy, that the kundalini energy that travels along those neural pathways. Okay. So you have to realize that. So the number of 7s is important here. Mark that for your homework if you have any. Okay, let's continue with this discussion. So what is the largest number of archetypes to Ra's knowledge used by a logos?
Questioner, what is the largest number of archetypes to Ra's knowledge used by a logos? Answer, I am Ra. The 7s plus the choice is the greatest number which has been used by our knowledge, by Logwa. It is the result of many, many previous experiments in articulation of the one creator.
Okay, so the 7s plus the choice is the greatest number which has been used, meaning the choice, meaning you can then expand in any way that you wish. Okay, so the 7s, the plus the choice. So the 7s plus the choice plus the choice is the greatest number which has been used by our knowledge, by logos, plural. It is the result of many, many previous experiments in articulation of the one creator. Okay. And what we're doing here is another experiment into the 7s plus the choice. We are now moving into the plus choice aspect of what we're doing with this logos in its ascension of the population of the planet. And it's not the first time the experiment has been done, but it's only the second time in the Milky Way galaxy that it has been performed.
Question 91.18. Questioner, I assume, then, that 22 is the greatest number of archetypes. I also ask, is it the minimum number presently in use by any logos to Ra's knowledge? Answer, I am Ra.
7 plus the choice. So you would get to 22, right? 21 plus the choice is 22. So 3 times 7 is 21 plus the choice, the body plus the, right? So now I'm not referring to the physical plane body in this aspect. I'm referring to the non-physical plane body, which is the individual spirit body, or the collective consciousness of the individual spirit bodies involved in the choice of the logo, of the logos. Okay, so that's what Ra's referring to here.
The fewest are the 2 systems of 5 which are completing the cycles or densities of experience. You must grasp the idea that the archetypes were not developed at once but step by step, and not in order as you know the order of this space-time, but in various orders. Therefore, the 2 systems of 5s were using 2 separate ways of viewing the archetypical nature of all experience.
Okay, so now we're talking about how we got to that. Okay, so let me rewind that a little bit, right? Because the fewest are the 2 systems of 5s, which are completing the cycles of densities of experience. You must grasp the idea that the archetypes were not developed at once, step by step, or by step by step, and that not in the order of what you're used to, right? Or as you know the order at this space-time, but in various orders. Therefore, the 2 systems of 5 were using 2 separate ways of viewing the archetypical nature of all experience.
Each, of course, used the matrix, the potentiator, and the significator, for this is the harvest with which our creation began.
Okay, so that was the old way of doing things, and that's why we have residuals of that dynamic, counting of 10 here. That is literally the 2 systems of 5. Okay, so originally there was 1 system of 5, then there was another system of 5, then it was combined in the 2 systems of 5, and that became the 10, and that was the norm until we went to the system of 7 plus the choice. So it was the system of 7, and then we added the system of the 7 plus the choice, as the creator is allowing people in the universe to upgrade to these different ways of ascending. We are now adding a different ascension to that upgrade because of the free will of the individual, of the one. Okay, so we're doing the system of the 7s and the 1 to allow the free will of the potentiator or the manipulator, that which is us as a consciousness, individual and a collective. Okay.
One way or system of experimentation had added to these the catalyst and the experience. Another system, if you will, had added catalyst and transformation. In one case, the methods whereby experience was processed was further aided, but the fruits of experience less aided. In the second case, the opposite may be seen to be the case. Question 91.19. Questioner, thank you. We have some observations on the archetypes which are as follows. First, the matrix of the mind is depicted in the Egyptian tarot by a male, and this we take as creative energy intelligently directed. Will Ra comment on this? Answer, I am Ra. This is an extremely thoughtful perception, seeing as it does the male not specifically as biological male but as a male principle. You will note that there are very definite sexual biases in the images. They are intended to function both as information as to which biological entity or energy will attract which archetype, and also as a more general view which sees polarity as a key to the archetypical mind of 3rd density.
Okay, so that's the end of part 1 of session 91. And then we'll load the part 2.
The pineal gland has tiny little cilia.
fast forward,
hair-like
or I'll have to
extensions
skip
all around it.
when I can. There we go. All right, so session 91, part 2, June 26th.
Question 91.20. Questioner, the second observation is that we have a wand which...
And there's Brooke. Hi, Brooke. How we doing? I love you, baby. Wanted to say hi. She popped in. Just for those of you around the world listening, Brooke is flying from Australia on Monday, and she's coming out here to California. And I'm going to pick her up, and she's going to stay with me for almost an entire month before she goes back home. So, Brooke, I love you, baby. You must be on your lunch. Welcome to the Law of One. I'll go ahead and continue with the Law of One, session 91. I love you.
which has been seen as the power of the will. Will Ra comment? Answer, I am Ra. The concept of will is indeed pouring forth from each facet of the image of the matrix of the mind. The wand as the will, however, is, shall we say, an astrological derivative of the outreaching hand forming the, shall we say, magical gesture. The excellent portion of the image which may be seen distinctly as separate from the concept of the wand is that sphere which indicates the spiritual nature of the object of the will of one wishing to do magical acts within the manifestation of your density. Question 91.21. Questioner, the hand downward has been seen as seeking from within and not from without and the active dominance over the material world. Would Ra comment on that? Answer, I am Ra. Look again, O student. Does the hand reach within? Nay. Without potentiation the conscious mind has no inwardness. That hand, O student, reaches towards that which, outside its unpotentiated influence, is locked from it.
Right. So again, let me go back to talking about what Lao Tzu said between 634 BCE and 604 BCE. I don't know exactly when he said it, but again, he who seeks it will not find it. He who grasps it for it, ropes for it, will not grasp it. So, right. So the question was, the hand downward has been seen in the seeking from within and not from without in the active dominance over the material world. Would you comment on that? Right. Look again, O student, does the hand reaching within, right? Does the hand reach within? Nay. Without potentiation, the conscious mind has no inwardness. That hand, O student, reaches towards that which outside is unpotentiated influence and is locked from it. You must look within, reach within to find the way. You cannot find it in the physical, so the hand cannot reach for it. It has to be the mind, it has to be the soul, it has to be the spirit looking within itself and recognizing itself to find the oneness with the universe, with the matrix, with the nature, to find and unlock the knowledge that is gained from doing so in a non-physical way only. Okay, so universal enlightenment. Enlightenment is universal, and all enlightenment comes from the universe, not from looking in the flesh and experience on earth. I'm alive for 50 years, therefore I must be wise because I have walked this earth, and therefore listen to me because I know what I'm talking about. That's the problem with self-serving people, is they believe that just them being around and alive means that they're in charge. And the truth is, when you actually start ascending and you look at people, you'll find that most people, no matter what their physical body is, they're between 12 and 14 years of age mentally, and they never change unless they actually start ascending. And then they start gaining in both wisdom, understanding, or understanding, and they start gaining in many other aspects, unless they're self-serving. But if they're in service to others, then they gain from it, and they gain knowledge, and they gain wisdom from the universe itself.
Question 91.22. Questioner, the square cage represents the material illusion and is an unmagical shape. Can Ra comment on that? Answer, I am Ra. The square, wherever seen, is the symbol of the third density illusion and may be seen either as unmagical or, in the proper configuration, as having been manifested within, that is, the material world given life. Question 91.
right? So do you see that, right? Okay. So the square cage has represents the material illusion and is an unmagical shape. Can Ra comment on that? The square, wherever seen, is the symbol of the third density, third dimension, illusion, square. Okay. Third dimension, illusion, and may be seen either in unmagical or in the proper configuration as having been manifested within, that is the material world given life. Okay, ponder that for a moment. So we give the material world life because we manifested from within to become what it is without. As within, so without, as below, so above.
2-3. Questioner, the dark area around the square, then, would be the darkness of the subconscious mind. Would Ra comment on that? Answer, I am Ra. There is no further thing to say to the perceptive student.
Right, because then the darkness is the veiling, the darkness is the mind wiping, that is the law of confusion.
Question 91.24. Questioner.
Hence the Vikings with Fenrir the wolf covering the sky in darkness. You hear those metaphors of that all over the world. That's a metaphor for not being illuminated, not being awake, not being able to see with the third eye. Those types of metaphors are used in all spiritual aspects of all religions in the history of this world.
The checkered portion
and every other world for that matter. But you can't check the reference on that.
Would represent polarity. Answer, I am Ra. This also is satisfactory. Question 91.25. Questioner, the bird is a messenger which the hand is reaching down to unlock. Can Ra comment on that? Answer, I am Ra. The winged visions or images in this system are to be noted not so much for their distinct kind as for the position of the wings. All birds are indeed intended to suggest that just as the matrix figure, the magician, cannot act without reaching its winged spirit, so neither can the spirit fly lest it be released into conscious manifestation and fructified thereby. Question 91.26.
Okay, so now we're talking about, now they're getting into, I believe the different aspects of the tarot cards, but the archetypes nonetheless, right? Okay, so the bird is a messenger. Same thing with the Hootie bird. Like when you look at Thoth was synonymous with the Hootie bird. That's why Thoth has the bird head, and that's wisdom, right? So the bird is the messenger, which the hand is reaching down to unlock. Can Ra talk about that? The winged versions or images in the system that are to be noted not so much of their distinction kind as for the position of the wings. All birds are indeed intended to suggest that just as the matrix figure, the magician cannot act without reaching its wings spiritual spirit, his winged spirit or the spiritual aspect, so neither can the spirit fly lest it be released into the conscious manifestation and fortified thereby. So again, you cannot take flight. You cannot learn that aspect of yourself until you manifest that within yourself. So you have to become and realize, I am the spirit. I am my higher self. The only way that you can take flight, the only way that you can then move into that aspect of yourself and expand on that is by realizing, internalizing, I am. Do you see?
Questioner, the star would represent the potentiating forces of the subconscious mind. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This particular part of this image is best seen in astrological terms. We would comment at this space-time that Ra did not include the astrological portions of these images in the system of images designed to evoke the archetypical light motifs. Question 91.27. Questioner, Are there any other additions to card number 1 other than the star that are of other than the basic archetypical aspects? Answer: I am Ra. They are details of each image seen through the cultural eye at the time of inscription. This is to be expected. Therefore, when viewing the, shall we say, Egyptian costumes and systems of mythology used in the images, it is far better to penetrate to the heart of the costume's significance or the creature's significance rather than clinging to a culture which is not your own. In each entity the image will resonate slightly differently. Therefore, there is the desire upon Ra's part to allow for the creative envisioning of each archetype using general guidelines rather than specific and limiting definitions.
Right. And so you have to realize that since the evolution of the tarot cards, right, we talked about that before on Wednesday, a couple weeks ago. So the evolution of the cards, and when Reese was there, we were talking about that. It's still the same. They all still represent the same archetypes. They just are drawn with different aspects as different characters and different things. Like when you have, like, say, fairy cards or goblin cards or dragon cards or Pokemon cards, they're still the same suits. They're still the same major arcana. Same thing with regular playing cards, using that as for divination or the like. It's still the same. The 4 suits are still the same aspects. And then you have the positive and negative to that. That's why you have the cards that face the same direction, up and down. So half of the card is now up and the other half is down. So you can then justify those the way you like, and you can read them both up and down to see whatever the aspect is when you're doing it. It becomes a little bit more difficult in the other cards when you have them turned right side up or upside down. It makes it easier. So that's why in those regular tarot decks around the world, they're all that way. But if you were to get in any decks together, unless you're like tripling the number or whatever, but say, let's stick with the original 22 card deck, and you get the Egyptian 22 card deck, and then you get the fairy 22 card deck, and then you get, like I was saying, I use the goblin, whatever. And you get all 3 of those and put them together, you're going to find that they all have the exact same archetypes. They are just going to be represented in a slightly different picture, but whatever it is that the image is going to represent those same archetypes. And those archetypes are going to be like the cups and wands and the like, hearts and spades and clubs and diamonds. They're all going to be the same. The diamonds would be the swords or the wands, and you see my point. So you would find how those compare. So if you actually paid attention to that sort of thing and use that same theory of, like, say, theology is to religion, where you would find the like to like in every religion, instead of, they don't do that in theology these days. Instead of finding like to like in religion, they primarily try to find differences, and then they try to go, well, we got to find who the oldest one was, the oldest scroll, and find that information. And that unfortunately, they start chopping down all the trees in the forest trying to find the one tree. And then they go, okay, well, that's still the oldest one. There's got to be an older one. Let's go over to that forest and chop that one down and find out how many rings that one has. And you come to find out that you spend your entire eternity looking for the oldest scroll instead of actually paying attention to what all of them have in common, and that's the message on all of their scrolls. Same thing with the tarot. People think that each tarot deck is completely different. It's not. It's just an energy that is the tool that is a potentiator for the individual, and what you feel drawn to is going to help you. So if you don't feel drawn to goblins or something like that, or Egyptian mythology, you're not going to be comfortable using those cards. But if you like fairies, you're going to use the fairy cards because you're more in tune with that energy from the fairies. It doesn't mean that the cards are going to give you a different reading. They're just going to give you better access as an individual. You're going to be more in tune with that. Same thing goes for nature and anything else. If you are more in tune with different aspects of nature, that will allow you to use this. So in casting spells, whatever you call, some people want to call in their guides and angels or archangels. Other people don't call in archangels; they call in gods, or they just call in the corners and the aspects of of the earth or elementals. So it depends on what people want to work with and what they feel comfortable working with. And you have to find that about yourself and what you're drawn to, whether you call in archangels or if you call in people's guides or if you call in elementals or if you call in water signs or earth signs, or if you're calling in those aspects of air, earth, water, fire, earth, air, fire, water, and utilizing just the elementals of that. Or if you're using some representation in a physical, like say for fire, you're using the phoenix, and for the air, which would be a bird, which would be wisdom, you would maybe use the hooty, or you would use a crow. Or you see my point? The aspect is still the same, and the representation is still the potentiator, and the potentiator becomes the tool, or the aspect of the tool becomes the potentiator or the potentiation, and you become the aspect of the creator or the logos to control that or glean from it what you will. Let's continue.
Question 91.28. Questioner: the cup represents a mixture of positive and negative passions. Could Ra comment on that? Answer: I am Ra. The ultic portions of this instrument's physical vehicle did not perceive a significant portion of your query. Please re-query. Question 91.29. Questioner: there is apparently a cup which we have as containing a mixture of positive and negative influences. However, I personally doubt this. Could Ra comment on this, please?
Right. So Penny said, I put it up on the screen for those of you on the MP4 broadcast. You can see that. Penny said, I have difficulty with using cards. So I use pendulums and I just listen to my guides. There you go. Some people don't need to use any of those tools. We start you with tools when we train you, and we get you used to doing things with the tools and going through rituals and going through that physical manifestation of things. And then eventually, when we start pulling you into high magic, then we would start removing tools from you, because we start training you that you are the tool and you don't need all of those things. However, you can still use all of those things in their aspects for what they want, depending on the time of month, year, or the weight of or intensity of a spell that you're trying to cast. That's why when you go to a church, the spell that the clergy is casting from the pulpit is first visual, or the manifestation of the priest being there reading from the holy book, and then eventually giving you communion, which is a spell being cast, where they set the tone with incense. They go through the same motions. They tell you, you can't create those spells. Those are evil and the devil, and how dare you? And when you look at what is it exactly that these evil witches are doing, well, you take incense and you burn incense, or you use smoke from something else to clear the energy of the room. And how is that different from a mass in a Christian church? Not. They use incense and they burn incense so that it wafts in the air and everybody smells that. And then they go to an altar and they have cups, and they have a wand or a sword, and they have all these different things. They have a book, and so they have all these things for divination that they're using, holy relics that they're using to wave their hand in the sign of a cross over the water or the wine, or for the sacrament, and breaking pieces of bread and putting them there. And they're going through a ritual, and they're saying something, an incantation from a book of spells, the Bible, as they're reading a certain passage from the Bible, and as they're now chanting and humming a certain thing in a certain order at a certain time, and picking something up and holding it up and waving it around and waving their hand over it and putting it back down. They're doing a ritual and they are casting a spell. Exactly what they're telling you not to do, because it's evil and it's the devil, and they're actually doing it. Oh, well, they're doing it for holy purposes because they're calling in God and you're calling in the devil. I don't remember anybody saying they were calling in any devil when they were calling in the aspects of the nature itself. They were calling in that which was created by the same creator that these people are invoking, and sometimes invoking the same creator and the same archangels and all these aspects. So they're being hypocritical and telling you that what you're doing is evil, but what they're doing is not in fact evil, and it's helping your immortal soul, but they're creating a spell. And the same thing happens with other people doing things. Like Cassie can tell you, I remember a time in her life when when she was at her friend's who was dying at the time, and she was there, and she was working with her friend, and she was actually casting a spell to assist and help her friend. And this other friend said that Cassie was the devil and a demon, and she was casting evil spells. So the very first thing that woman did was went out and came back with a spell and cast a spell to protect the people from Cassie's spell. And I laughed when Cassie showed it to me. I laughed, and we both had a great laugh out of it. I'm like, that woman's casting a spell to stop you from casting a spell. So she believed that Cassie was an evil witch trying to do something bad. So she ran out and came back with a spell to cast on Cassie, or to cast on the house, to stop Cassie from casting the evil spell that she was casting. So the very people who were telling you that what you're doing is evil will in fact cast a spell to stop you from casting a spell, and say that theirs is a good spell that they're casting against your bad spell, right? Right. She said, no, I never cast a spell. Laugh out loud. Did a healing for her. That's right. You weren't even actually casting a spell. You were doing a healing. My bad. Cassie just said that. I just put it up on the screen. So she didn't actually cast a spell. She was doing a healing for her. So she was doing like Reiki, healing her. And the girl decided that she was the devil and casting a spell on her, and had to run out and actually cast a spell to try and stop Cassie from casting a spell that she thought Cassie was casting when Cassie was just Reikiing her. So that's hilarious when you think about that. Again, it's the devil. You're the devil because you're doing something that I'm not comfortable with and I don't know anything about. So therefore, I'm going to run out and research a spell that I'm going to cast. And that's what that woman did. And I thought it was hilarious. And we had a good laugh. Cassie and I had a great laugh at the fact that the woman was running out and coming back with a spell to cast because she thought Cassie was casting a spell and Cassie was just Reikiing this woman. All right, let's continue. That's hilarious.
Answer, I am Ra. Doubt not the polarity, O student, but release the cup from its stricture. It is indeed a distortion of the original image. Question 91.30. Questioner, what was the original image? Answer, I am Ra. The original image had the checkering as the suggestion of polarity. Question 91.31. Questioner, then was this a representation of the waiting polarity to be tasted by the matrix of the mind? Answer, I am Ra. This is exquisitely perceptive.
Right, that gets back to, again, perception, which Ra is just now saying there. That gets back to, Penny said, some would say that is casting a spell. She said it's woo-woo witchery, like my father would say. So, yeah, some people, hocus pocus or whatever, Yeah, so we don't see reality. We see reality for who we are through the lens of ourselves. We don't see religion the way religion truly is. We see it through the lens of ourselves, right? So people will cast judgment on you because you don't subscribe to the exact religion and way that they subscribe to that exact religion and way, right? Wars are fought over whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, when in fact, and I love that Ridley Scott, when he was making the Kingdom of Heaven, showed that, which was more of a documentary, and he even said that it was a movie because they didn't make up any of the script. It was actual history. They were just filming it, just like the movie Troy. They were actually filming it. So in that, when Balian shows up in Jerusalem, he's sitting down with some knights, and they're eating that, or they took him to Jerusalem, and they were going to take him into to the other ranks where the rest of the Templar Knights and in that holy order were, and eventually he gets to be led in to see the knight who is basically the king of Jerusalem, who is a Templar Knight. And as they're sitting there, it's time for the Muslims to pray, and they were allowed to do so. They were living completely side by side with Muslims, and as they were praying, the knight, who is a Christian, a Templar Knight, he's saying what they're saying in at the time they were, I think it was Arabic. At the time it might have been Pharisee or Sanskrit. I don't think it was that far back, so it might have been Arabic by that time. And they were saying, Allahu Akbar, and he was repeating that, right? And saying, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. right? And repeating what that meant. So, praise be to God, right? Allah Akbar, praise be to God. It is good to praise God. And so then he was saying, peace be upon you, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, alaikum salam, and also you. And that is literally the words that Christians say, Catholics, Roman Catholics to this day. The priest will get up and he will say, peace be with you. And you respond with, and also with you. So because the Muslims are saying it in Arabic, assalamu alaikum, that means peace be upon you, alaikum salam, and also you. Okay? So because they're not saying it in English, or at that time, or French, because that's what they were speaking, but we're translating it in English for the movie that was being made, because it was made in Hollywood in the United States. So, or made by Hollywood in the United States, made on location somewhere. So, but because of that, it would seem different. So when the knight explained to him the words of what they were doing, he said, Balian said, words not unlike our own. And he said, yes. So the knights that were there, most of them, not all of them, but those who were in service to others at the time, were aware of the similarities between the Muslims and the Christians. And they also were wise enough to know that it was only the semantical things that separated them from each other. And that was what the zealots would focus on. There is only one God, and now insert the word and this person is the prophet. The Muslims would say Muhammad is his prophet, and the Christians would say Jesus is his prophet. And because those were two different peoples, they were going to war over which one was the prophet, because the zealots of each religion believed there can be only one. And therefore, Jesus is the only prophet, and Muhammad was not. And the Muslims were saying the same thing, and they were killing each other over a semantical ideology of who the prophet is, not accepting that there could be more than one prophet for different peoples that are preaching the same thing, when inevitably, when you read those words from those people, they were preaching the same thing. And both were referring to the prophets of Moses as their teaching. So truly, if you wanted to go further back, both would start with and talk to you about Moses said this and that. Muhammad more so than Jesus. And Moses said, and Moses said, and Moses said. Remember, Moses said. So the truth is that both of them are wrong based on their own ideology of who's right, because they're both talking from the book of Moses. Hence, when Jesus was talking and he was saying things about the laws, the Hebrew laws, and the guys at the time, I think he was in Capernaum again, were saying, Moses, you can't say these things because of the law of Moses. Or he said, Jesus, you can't say these things because of the law of Moses. You're going against the law of Moses. And Jesus said, I am the law of Moses. And they were like, we're going to have to stone you now because you're an affront to God in their judgment. And Jesus said, no, I will not be allowing you to do that today. You will not be stoning me to death because I am not allowing you to do that today. And he walked away and they didn't do anything about it. But he said, I am the law of Moses. So the truth is that if you're going to go to war, those two are also wrong, because Moses is what both of them were based on and referring to. So if you go back far enough, the Hebrews love me when I say this, because the Hebrews say Jesus wasn't a prophet and neither was Muhammad, because Moses was God's prophet. So the Hebrews would love me for saying that, and I'm not a Hebrew, right? But they would love me for saying that right there, because they'd go, right, what we're saying.
Question 91.32. Questioner, I have listed here the sword as representing struggle. I am not sure that I even can call anything in this diagram a sword. Would Ra comment on that? Answer, I am Ra. Doubt not the struggle, O student, but release the sword from its stricture. Observe the struggle of a caged bird to fly. Question 91.33. Questioner, I have listed the coin represents work accomplished. I am also in doubt about the existence of the coin in this diagram. Could Ra comment on that, please? Answer, I am Ra. Again, doubt not that which the coin is called to represent, for does not the Maga strive to achieve through the manifested world? Yet release the coin from its stricture. Question 91.34. Questioner, and finally, the magician represents the conscious mind. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. We ask the student to consider the concept of the unfed conscious mind, the mind without any resource but consciousness. Do not confuse the unfed conscious mind with that mass of complexities which you as students experience, as you have so many times dipped already into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation. Question 9.
So again, right? So he's saying, literally, we ask the student to consider the concept of the unfed conscious mind, the mind without any resource but consciousness. Do not confuse the unfed conscious mind with that mass of complexities which you as students experience, as you have many times dipped already into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation. So the question was, and finally, the magician represents the conscious mind. Is that correct? Okay. So it's the unfed conscious mind that the magician represents, not the personality of I think, therefore I am. And that's what he's talking about. So not the physical plane of existence where you so many times have dipped into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation. Okay? Those are concepts that are in the thinking mind in the physical plane. So it's the unfed conscious mind, meaning the surrender to the universe of the potentiation of infinity itself, the potentiation of infinite wisdom, infinite mind, infinite love, infinity of the creation of the creator. Do you see? Not, I think, therefore I am, not the culmination of all my experience is what reality is. We perceive reality not for how it is, but for how we are. So when you get out of that ego of your experience, away from the ego of your knowledge, away from the ego of your potentiation, away from the ego of you as the catalyst, and surrender to the universe or your higher self in the respect of the ascension and the process, and see reality through the eyes of not the potentiation, not the catalyst, not the experience, not any memory, but for what it is. So you're no longer in time, and you're not associating yourself with time, not associating yourself with your past, with your present, and with your future, but you're associating yourself with all of that as now. Then that takes away the bias of your experience being the catalyst and potentiation for your transformation. That is what Ra is talking about right there. So we ask the student to consider the concept of the unfed conscious mind, the mind without any resource, nothing to draw on, but consciousness in and of itself. Do not confuse the unfed conscious mind with that mass of complexities that is your mind, right? Which is you as students experience, as you have so many times dipped already into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation. So take away all that you know. You must unlearn all that you have learned. Right? Yoda said that in Return of the Jedi. No, in Return of the Jedi. So think about that. I think it was Return of the Jedi. It might have been the second movie, somewhere after the first one. So The Empire Strikes Back, I think, during his teaching in Empire Strikes Back, before Return of the Jedi, he told Luke that you must unlearn all that you have learned, because you have to clear the mind of that experience, that knowledge, that potentiation, that catalyst that you are, that you're trying to base the universe on. You're trying to fit it into a box of what you know as reality. And you have to unlearn all that. So you have to be wise enough to say, I don't know anything. Hence the term of Socrates in his statement of the more you know, the more you realize that you know nothing. Okay. Let's continue here.
21.35. Questioner, are these all of the components, then, of this first archetype? Answer, I am Ra. These are all you, the student, see. Thusly the complement is complete for you. Each student may see some other nuance. We, as we have said, did not offer these images with boundaries but only as guidelines intending to aid the adept and to establish the architecture of the deep, or archetypical, portion of the deep mind. Question 91.36. Questioner.
Right, so do you see that? Right. So again, now you have to allow, right? So these are all you. These are all you. The students see. Thusly, the complement is complete for you. Each student may see some other nuance. We, as we have said, did not offer these images with the boundaries, but only as a guideline, intending to aid the adept and to establish the I can't say that word right now. Architecture. I don't know why I was saying that. I was trying to say architecture of the deep or archetypical portions of the deep mind. So as a guideline, so the visuals that they're talking about from the cards are supposed to be a guideline to allow you to understand where you are in the residing of aspect of each card as to what archetype that you're working in, and that you're supposed to then be able to perceive that which is the knowledge that is potentiated.
How is the knowledge of the facets of the archetypical mind used by the individual to accelerate his evolution? Answer, I am Ra. We shall offer an example based upon this first explored archetype or concept complex. The conscious mind of the adept may be full to bursting of the most abstruse and unimaginable of ideas, so that further idation becomes impossible and work in Blu-ray or indigo is blocked through overactivation. It is then that the adept would call upon the new mind, untouched and virgin, and dwell within the archetype of the new and unblemished mind without bias, without polarity, full of the magic of the logos. Question 91.37. Questioner, then you are saying, if I am correct in understanding what you have just said, that the conscious mind may be filled with an almost infinite number of concepts, but there is a set of basic concepts which are what I would call important simply because they are the foundations for the evolution of consciousness, and will, if carefully applied, accelerate the evolution of consciousness, whereas the vast array of concepts, ideas, and experiences that we meet in our daily lives may have little or no bearing upon the evolution of consciousness except in a very indirect way. In other words, what we are attempting to do here is find the motivators of evolution and utilize them to move through our evolutionary track. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. Not entirely. The archetypes are not the foundation for spiritual evolution, but rather are the tool for grasping in an undistorted manner the nature of this evolution. Question 91.38. Questioner, so for an individual who wished to consciously augment his own evolution, an ability to recognize and utilize the archetypes would be beneficial in sorting out that which he wishes to seek from that which would be not as efficient a seeking tool. Would this be a good statement? Answer, I am Ra. This is a fairly adequate statement. The term efficient might also fruitfully be replaced by the term undistorted. The archetypical mind, when penetrated lucidly, is a blueprint of the builded structure of all energy expenditures and all seeking without distortion. This, as a resource within the deep mind, is of great potential aid to the adept. We would ask for one more query at this space-time, as this instrument is experiencing continuous surges of the distortion you call pain, and we wish to take our leave of the working while the instrument still possesses a sufficient amount of transferred energy to ease the transition to the waking state, if you would call it that. question 91.39. Questioner, since we are at the end of the matrix of the mind, I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Answer, I am Ra. Each is most conscientious. The instrument might be somewhat more comfortable with the addition of the swirling of the waters with spine erect. All other things which can be performed for the instrument's benefit are most diligently done. We commend the continual fidelity of the group to the ideals of harmony and thanksgiving. This shall be your great protection. All is well, my friends. The appurtenances and alignments are excellent. I am Ra. I leave you glorying in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, so we'll end it there for this week, because we'll end at the end of a session, right? Because it's getting later already. It's already 20 minutes to 6, so I should get off here so I can get my mother in and bathe her and then get dinner going. Okay, so that was actually a lot of information, and I think we're going to continue down the road. I think Don continues down the road of asking questions about the tarot, but the tarot cards, again, are the chakras, are the archetypes, and you can do readings with them because we're all ruled by all of those archetypes. The entire universe is ruled by all of those archetypes. So that system was set up as the part of the matrix because it is part of the creator of the universe. So therefore, everything it's all because this is all actually happening in the mind of the creator of the universe. All of this are all aspects that govern things. So as you come in, how do we become individuals? We become individuals because we're all born on different times of on our lives. So we're born on a planet, and we're born on a different continent, different city, different continent, whatever, to different aspects, to different people. Even people that have the same birthday as you will have individuality because they were born in a different place than you, to a different genetic code than you, sometimes a different continent than you, brought up by a completely different culture with a completely different language. And then they could have been born on the same day as you, but there's 24 hours in that day. So what is the aspect of what they were born under, and what is their DNA, and what are all of those archetypes come into play for each individual as a potentiation for an individuality and an individual physical experience. However, you as a soul are also an individual, and I'm not even going to get involved in that aspect of the archetypes of your soul, because that's not supposed to be something that you guys are even supposed to be pondering yet in the third dimension, because this place is the first place you're in fact self-aware. Not to mention, is also the first place that you realize I have an immortal soul, or wait, I am an immortal soul or immortal spirit. Some people think there's a difference between a soul and a spirit, so they don't understand or understand what's going on in that respect, and that give a definition. Everybody starts to break things down into 47,000 million kinds of layers for everything, and so there's an aspect for everything. Just like the Egyptians did further in the past, the more you go back there, you have a God who created my fingernail on my left hand and my pointer finger, another God who created the next fingernail. And then there was a God who created my wrist, and a God who created my elbow, and a God who created my arm, and a God who created my left toe, or my left toe on my big toe on my left foot. So there was a God that created everything. Right? So children will do that. This was created. Then they break it down. There's a God that created the knuckle up to the finger of the finger, and then the next knuckle on my pinky finger is the different God, and the next knuckle. So there was a time when there was many, 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 many gods for every single thing, and everyone said that there was a God of trees, and a God of rocks, and a God of the air, and a God of the water, and a God. And so that was the concept that they came up with, and that became so many gods. Nobody had the knowledge of who the hell all these gods were. So eventually they had to write it all down. And then when they wrote it all down, they had an entire book, 10,000 pages long or scrolls long with all the gods. Then somebody started going, why don't we condense that and have less gods? And so then that started to evolve over time as people were realizing maybe there's not a God for every single tree. Maybe there's not a God for every single bush. Maybe there's not a God for every single leaf. Maybe it is different. And then they started to ponder things and start realizing maybe there was 1 or 2 or 10 or 50. So then you had the many gods, which we refer to now, thinking there was many gods, because then you had a bunch of gods with a man and a woman and a bunch of other gods. And then eventually that started to evolve as the people were evolving. That started to evolve to actual knowledge of the universe. And that started condensing things from the many gods to lesser and lesser amounts instead of adding more and more and more. Hence why evil in this place is trying to now make it so that there are about 400 genders. They're trying to introduce the many back because that was a lot of confusion and people were farthest away from the light when they were confused with many languages speaking in tongue, many religions, many of everything, the more of everything that everybody has, and it's an individual and people are killing over the individual things with clans, with neighbors, and so the smaller the units, the more units there are, the better off they are because the more strife they can get you into, the more you can kill each other off, and the shorter your life expectancy because of that, and the quicker you recycle, and the more they can stay in control of the end game or in control of the mass population of the planet. So they're trying to go back to that with as much confusion as they can by controlling the narrative of everything. So when you Google something, they give you positive and negative aspirins. There is no definitive proof aspirin does anything, but buy the aspirin because they're selling you an aspirin, right? So they're literally do that with everything. During COVID, they told you, lied to you and said, there is no definitive proof that vitamin C will help you get rid of COVID. Go back and think. If you lived through that, go back and remember what was said to you. Okay? Because everything that they said to you, we now know did more damage to you than not. They're doing that with everything. Okay? Everything. They're trying to have you with the many everything. Confusion, more confusion. They're literally putting out more confusion than anything else. Their end game right now is confusion. Why? And AI is assisting them with that. Why? Because more and more people are becoming universally enlightened and they're gaining the same knowledge. They have to convince everybody that that's wrong and that everything is wrong. They've learned from Operation Mockingbird. They learned from Operation Blue Book. They learned from these operations in the 1940s around the world that the more dis and misinformation there is out there, the more they can control the masses. Because they have you fighting over what you think is the truth. Bless you. They have you fighting over what you believe is the truth. So they don't care what you believe as long as you believe something, as long as you root for something. They want you to be a sports fanatic if you like sports. And therefore, you have to hate the people of the other team. You have to want to fight against them. My team's better than your team. And then if not, they want you to, if you're religious, yes, pick a religion and fight those other people because they're all lying. They've all created it and they're all lying and they're all going to try and get you. And everybody's doing that and they're teaching that to everybody. If you're into politics, hate the other side because their politics is opposite of mine and therefore you're my enemy. And so whatever it is that you believe in, they have an opposition for you. Their job is oppositions. That's why we call them the opposition. Because that is their religion. Their religion is opposition. Their religion is control, and their control is chaos. So you have to realize that. They're sowing chaos in everything to create chaos in everyone, to create fear and violence in everyone, a fear of the other, violence of the other, yelling past each other. Nobody talks to each other. And meanwhile, while you're fighting each other and worried about what the neighbor's doing, you're not paying attention that they're ripping you off the entire time. Taking everything and controlling you with everything, telling you who to hate, when to hate them, telling you what to eat, when to eat it, what to wear it, when to go to work, what you need to go to work. And then you have to have insurance on top of insurance, on top of insurance, on top of insurance. All that money filters up to them. You got to have a job because they want you to pay money to pay money. So you need money. So you have to get money. And the only way you can get money is to go to work for them and then take the money and spend it to them and then take the money and hand it to another one of their agents and another one of their agents. And then you're out of money. And what do? I got to go and get more money. And they keep you in this cycle and you're a hamster on a wheel running and you don't realize you're not going anywhere and you're running for your life. I got to get there. I got to go. And if you would just look like this, you would realize you're not getting anywhere, and the road in front of you is just coming over the top of your head. And that's what they have you doing. That is what they're doing in the place of doing. They're making you do things. And they're keeping you doing them so long that you have no idea what you're doing. And you're just running and running and running and running and running and running until you drop dead. Then they kick you out of the way and put another one right on that treadmill and get you running too. And if they can continue to have you do that and keep you asleep your entire life, they're done their job. And they're getting all the wealth and keeping this place exactly the way it is, and only advancing a little bit of here and there with technology so that everyone goes, well, we're not like our parents. They had these weird phones where you had to pick it up and there was something on the face and you had to turn something. And then that was my grandparents. And then my parents had one that had buttons, numbers. I don't know what that was about, right? So then they give you a cell phone. You're like, I have a cell phone. It's completely different. So when you go to call somebody on there, you touch a button on a screen and it opens up another window, and then you touch buttons and that phone does the same thing that phone did that they went bloop, 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 bloop with, or the same one that they went reverted, or the same thing that they picked it up and said, Ethel, call my mom. Ethel, call my mom. Google, call mom. Okay. Cortana, call mom. Fortuna, call mom. Karen, call mom. It's exactly the same with a different interface, but it's the same. People used to take a newspaper and read words to get their information. How quaint, how outdated. Throw that away. Then you looked at a television and read words and heard people speaking the words that they were reading off of a teleprompter. They're reading the words to you and you're listening. Then they gave you a device where you're reading words. Same thing, different interface. You're no longer reading off of a piece of paper or watching it on a screen in front of you. You're watching it on a smaller screen and you're reading words. This one has combined that one in the newspaper, the television and the newspaper. You're either reading words or watching videos, but you still have to press buttons to get it to work. Weirdly, they're numbers. And then you get it to work by pressing other buttons. But now, because they're not depressed buttons, you're just touching them with your finger, which was a technology that they had in the 1970s on televisions to change the channels. You would walk up and touch it, and it would go up and down the dial by touching it. It was a touch screen, only it was metal that you touched, and the kinetic energy from your finger touched the metal, and it would work. And some of them you depressed slightly, boop, 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 and changed the channel. So they've just changed the interface to a different interface, but you're doing the same function. Dialing someone, holding the phone up. It's no different than dialing someone and holding the phone up. The interface has changed. So you think technology is so much superior because you can say to your phone, call mom. And it will call mom. So therefore, I'm superior in intellect. You're still doing the exact same function with a different technology, but it's the same function. So the function hasn't changed. The interface has. All they're upgrading is interface. That's it. People used to get on a horse and steer the horse. And you had to stop and feed the horse. And then you got on the horse and you rode the horse and you went somewhere. Now you get in a car and you have to push a button and then you have to steer the car. And you have to stop and feed the car. And then you ride the car. The difference is your car won't take off on its own, whereas the horse you had to tie up. Wait, you have to lock your car so someone won't steal it, just like a horse. The function is the same. The interface has changed. Okay? Now you're teaching the car to be more like a horse. Now you're teaching the car to drive itself. So it's actually going backwards in technology. You could now get drunk, go to sleep, and your car will drive you home. If you get on a horse and you pass out, that horse will walk home by itself. The interface has changed. The product is the same. Okay? No, it's not as different. Horses used to poop on the ground. Cars emit emissions in the air. Smells like shit, can cause cancer. One sits on the ground that you might step in and get on your clothes. The other one's in the air that you breathe. Both smell like shit. Both could cause cancer. The product is the same. The interface is different. Okay? So technology hasn't upgraded. The interface has changed. Okay? I used to have to walk to a building or drive to a building and go in the building where they had books for me to pick things up and read. Now I pick up my phone and I look things up, and I can look up the same things that were in that building that I had to go and pick up before. I have to spend the exact same amount of time reading as I did in that building. Only I can do it now anywhere. You could with a building too, because you could go and get this invention that I have over here that's called a book. And you could take that book with you in a backpack or in your pocket. And you could go and sit on a bus and read while the bus was driving you somewhere. Or you could go to dinner with your family and then get bored with them and eat and read at the same time, like the interface on your phone when you're sitting at the table because you don't want to talk to your family and you're on your phone. The interface has changed. The product is the same. You are no different in this life than the cavemen were thousands of years ago. The difference is you think that you've changed because you have a different interface. Okay? Thank you, Brooke. I love you very much. I hope you're still here. You just said that 7 minutes ago. She said, I love you, baby. Another great live. Thank you for all your hard work and preparation that you do. Let me put it up on the screen so you guys can see that the woman who I am going to marry is praising me and giving me kudos and haikus. Thank you very much, baby. Right. For all the energy that you spend on each live. You're truly amazing, and I appreciate you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much, woman. So thank you, Brooke. I love you. So you have to realize these things. You have to see these. I see patterns in everything, guys. I'm on the spectrum, I'm sure of it. I haven't been diagnosed. But I see things in a way that most people don't notice. However, look around. Realize that what you think is technology, because I have a light here that uses electricity to illuminate my room, there's no difference between me lighting a candle or that. That has more candle power. In fact, they still tell you how many lumens that is, how much candle power that is. And your car, they tell you how many horses that your car can go. This car goes as fast as if I had 250 horses in front of me running. Okay, so they're literally still referring to the technology by the term of what it is. Think about that. Okay, a lot of stuff. So the difference is they've just made it more convenient for you to do at a different place than you would in the past. Takes less time to get the same information that it did before, but you're doing the same thing. You have to read it. You have to learn to read. Or you have to interface a different way because you can't read because they're not teaching you how to read, so you watch a video. Either way, you're still getting information. The interface is changing. It's all still the same. You don't realize that. You think you have technology and we're much more advanced than the people in the past. They were stupid, walking around cavemen, dragging their knuckles, because that's a justification of the ego, trying to say that we're so much more superior because we figured out how to take a piece of plastic and put it together in a way that would give me the same information. Therefore, I must be smarter. My brain is bigger. Oh, wait, dolphins' brains are bigger and so are whales. But then you change the dynamic of what you rate. If they were so intelligent, why aren't they in charge of the planet? Because maybe they're not all evil. They're in charge of 75% of the planet. You're only in charge of 25% of it. They're in charge of the ocean. So if you were there in that dynamic, would you fear dolphins and whales? Because they can kill you. Dolphins can kill killer whales. The killer whales hunt dolphins and eat them. So they have a natural enemy. Killer whales, orcas, like to eat dolphins, and they go after them and they eat them. Okay, but dolphins can kill shark. So you have different aspects that just like cats. If a snake comes after me, I can't move fast enough to not get bit by a snake. Cat can't get bit by a snake unless they don't notice the snake. And usually that doesn't matter either. Cats move faster than all snakes. So cats are the natural predator of snakes. Okay? So it's always good to keep cats around. Scorpions as well. Scorpions cannot sting a cat. Cat will move out of its way. Whoop, whoop. Okay? I've watched it happen. Okay? You look that up. Cats move faster. So you keep cats. Cats will protect you from snakes. They'll go after the snake. The snake will get frustrated and try and run from the cat, and the cat will hunt it. Okay? Same thing with scorpions. So poisonous animals that can outmaneuver and strike faster than a human can be saved by having cats around. Interface. Knowing things for the archetypes that they are. Seeing things for their potentiation. Realizing the matrix for what it's worth. All of these are aspects of you looking within and learning the knowledge that will give you, or learning those things from the universe that you only gain from internalizing, from surrendering to the universe, being in service to others. You gain this knowledge that allows you to then see and realize reality for what it truly is, not for what you think it is. It changes the way you look at things, because you start looking at things for the way they are, not the way you are. Once you get rid of your ego, once you move yourself aside and your experiences aside and look, you will then see. He who seeks it will not find it. He who grasps it will not grope it, or he who gropes it will not grasp it. It is only through internalization and surrender to the universe, and you have to be in service to others. Otherwise, you only learn the ways of the flesh. And that's power, money, fame, disaster, control, beating people, enslaving people, torturing people, and getting what you want by force. If you're not in service to self, you have to go down the road of being in service to others, and that's what it entails. Moving away from the physical into the spiritual. Not, I think, therefore I am in the physical. I am the spiritual. You associate with the spiritual, come from that place. It's easier to see who you were in the past. It's easier to see who you were in the future. Let's talk 5D now. It's easier to see who you're going to have, who have the potentiation to be. People who are mediums look into the future, and when people ask them questions, and they give them the potentiation of what could happen in their future. People who are mediums are already moving into that place, but they even have problems because if they're not associating themselves with their higher self, they're just being here and they're communicating with guides and the other person's higher self, but they're not communicating as their higher self. So even mediums block themselves from their higher self and the knowledge of the Akashic records because they're focusing on the here and now as a medium, moving between realms. From here, not from the higher self. So you have to realize your aspect as the higher self. I am sent me. Not I think, therefore I am. Think is a construct. I am. Okay? So I am, not I have a higher self. Who is that? Who is he? That's externalizing in the physical. That it's not me, it's someone else. You will never become your higher self and know your higher self when you refer to your higher self as the higher self, as something apart from you. It is you. I am that. Truly, the personality that I am is that. Once you do that, you can move within the personalities. First, your past lives. You can channel those persons, those fractions, those fractals, pieces of your true aspectal self. And you can communicate with them at will and move within that and hear them the same way you are a medium communicating with someone else's higher self or someone else's guides or someone else's relatives. You do the same thing, only instead of from the beginning, the start is here, you're doing it as I am my higher self. That is me. That is who I am. These are aspects avatars of my higher self, individual personalities that I chose to become and will be. Do you see? Okay. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week, wherever you are in the world, right? I'll see you guys either on Wednesday or in the Law of One chat or next Friday. Okay. I love you guys very much. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. I'm actually Kelto. I am Kelto. This is Leonard O'Neill, the host of this show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show.